Chapter 386. Boom! Suddenly, a golden light broke through the roof of the tower, creating a large hole. The person who came was revealed. She had 2 black ponytails, red eyes, and an elegant headdress. She wore revealing clothes and was driving a boat that was the size of 2 people. "See, I told you, you would definitely attract this troublesome woman." Gilgamesh looked at the person with disdain. This shameless dress, this bow, and this rude tone. "Are you Ishtar?" Wu-Ming suddenly realized and looked at Ishtar. Hey. What do you mean shameless dress and rude tone? I am Ishtar, the mistress of the heavens. Wait a minute, I almost got fooled by you. First, tell my father if you are the one who made them disappear. Ishtar refuted Wu-Ming's words, but she quickly realized that she was here to question Hyunryong. Then you are wrong, Ishtar. I was just summoned here in my servant form. Wu-Ming shook his head and denied Ishtar's words. At this time, Gilgamesh also said impatiently. I've already told you that the disappearance of your god is inevitable. Not only me, but even Xianlong didn't do anything. Yet, you relied on your willfulness to barge into this king's palace. You no longer have the protection of your father. Don't even think of leaving without leaving half of your family's property. Although he spoke righteously at the beginning, he began to feel that something was amiss towards the end. Don't even think about it. Don't even think about getting a penny from me. Ishtar stepped back in panic and looked at Gilgamesh and Wu-Ming vigilantly. I am not interested in money or treasures. Don't look at me. Wu-Ming raised his hand helplessly. That's right, you are always like this. You are not interested in money or treasures. You only care about protecting humans. Ishtar looked at Wu-Ming with disdain. It was as if she was looking at a money bank with no money. Humph. Since it has nothing to do with you, then goodbye. I don't want to stay here for a second longer. Ishtar said as she flew out of the roof with her horse Anna. That's why I hate that woman. She's so old, yet she doesn't even know how to walk through the door. Gilgamesh said rather irritably. Well, that's Ishtar's personality. Wu-Ming said as he drew a few lune runes in the air and filled the hole in the roof. In just a few seconds, the hole in the roof created by Ishtar was repaired. Oh, you can still use lune runes? You are now descending as a rider. Gilgamesh looked at this scene with interest. Of course I can. After all, even if I am a rider, I am still a Uruk Hyunryong. As your teacher, how can I not know how to use my magic? Wu-Ming explained. That's right, Wu-Ming descended as a rider this time. But Wu-Ming didn't want to descend as a rider. He wanted to descend as a saver. The reason why Wu-Ming descended as a rider was because of Siduri. Wu-Ming sent the Holy Grail to this era and was about to descend as a saver, but he heard Siduri's call. She's too reckless. This was Wu-Ming's evaluation of Siduri at that time. That's right, Siduri wanted to summon Wu-Ming as a god. In short, she wanted to summon Wu-Ming's original body. And she also knew that even when the priestess summoned Ishtar, she instantly exhausted her life, and only summoned a clone. If Wu-Ming didn't happen to be in Uruk, Siduri would have become a mummy by now. After that, Wu-Ming directly linked the Holy Grail to the summoning circle. Through Siduri's summon, Wu-Ming appeared as a rider and saved Siduri's life. After all, he was someone he knew. If he wasted his life in vain and failed to summon Hyunryong, it would be a little cruel. But you're really funny when you descend as a rider. What do these 2 pairs of dragon horns mean? Are they funny decorations? If that's really the case, you've undoubtedly succeeded. This king is very happy. Gilgamesh smiled as he looked at the 4 horns on Wu-Ming's head. Wu-Ming helplessly touched his horns. Kalas was considered a decoration, but there was a pair of horns on Wu-Ming's head. After all, Hyunryong appeared as a rider, so it was normal for him to have horns. Wu-Ming shrugged. By the way, Ishtar descended as a rider, right? Ishtar's current appearance was obviously not the original appearance of Ishtar. Wu-Ming had seen similar examples not long ago, such as Zhuge Kong Ming and Sima Yi. During the Battle of the 14 Riders, Ishtar also descended as a rider. Ah, that's right. The stupid priestess summoned the Uruk city god, Ishtar, without this king's permission. As a result, not only did the priestess die suddenly, but the woman also came to the Uruk in an incomplete rider. This king is very happy to see that woman in such a sorry state. When Gilgamesh thought of Ishtar coming to Uruk and not being able to find her father, even the gods who doted on her, she was so anxious that she was on the verge of tears. Gilgamesh was quite happy. You really have a bad taste, Wuming complained, although he was also very happy. So, what is the crisis in the Uruk? Tell me about it in detail. Wuming became serious. Now I kind of miss those idle gods. At least they don't want to destroy the human race because they have nothing better to do, Gilgamesh said sarcastically. Then, Gilgamesh explained to Wuming what happened. Enkidu died, and Hyunryong also disappeared because of Kanzaki's retreat. Gilgamesh, who had lost a good teacher and a good friend, was physically and mentally exhausted. So, he abandoned the Uruk and went to search for the elixir of immortality. After some twists and turns, the elixir of immortality that he found was stolen by a snake. At this time, Gilgamesh also came to a sudden realization. This king, who has seen the past and the future, doesn't need to continue living. King Gilgamesh returned to the Uruk, which was about to be abandoned, and as a virtuous king, he regoverned the Uruk and made the Uruk even more prosperous than before. At this time, all kinds of magical beasts that seemed to be Tiamat's children came out of nowhere and attacked the Mesopotamia. Gilgamesh stayed in the Holy Tower and organized the army to protect the Mesopotamia. And now that Wuming was summoned, it was a few days after the demonic beasts began their attack. Chapter 387. The enemy is Tiamat, and these beasts are undoubtedly the products of Tiamat, Gilgamesh explained. And I have received information that including Tiamat, a total of 3 goddesses have formed an alliance with the purpose of attacking the Uruk, but the other 2 goddesses are temporarily unknown. That is to say, it is likely that they are not gods of the Sumer pantheon, Wuming asked. It is not impossible, but except for Tiamat, the other 2 goddesses have not done anything, Gilgamesh said while arranging the clay on his desk. I have begun to form a front against the beasts, and now I have begun to build a defensive barrier behind Nippur city. With that, Gilgamesh handed a clay board to Wuming. Wuming took the clay board, and there was a map engraved on it. The map clearly indicated that there was a barrier blocking the rear of Nippur. The 2 sides of the barrier extended to the nearby mountains. It was impossible for magic beasts to attack from the mountains where movement was difficult, but Gilgamesh had also sent people to guard it. And the clay board indicated that the beasts were now approaching Babylon city. As long as the place is occupied by the magic beasts, it will be completely turned into a wasteland. This is what happened to these places before. The people who didn't have time to evacuate all disappeared. Gilgamesh pointed to the north of Babylon city. Those were places that had been crossed, and those cities had become abandoned cities, which meant that they had been captured by the beasts. So, in the current situation, Gil, what do you think? Wuming looked at Gilgamesh. Not to mention Gilgamesh's combat power and the state of the Sage King, Gilgamesh was a powerful figure with the pariah sword. Now Gilgamesh was in the human state, not the servant state. Some people may think that Gilgamesh in the human state was weak, but don't forget, how could Gilgamesh, who dared to go against the gods in Kanagami, be weak? The current Gilgamesh was at least stronger than Gilgamesh in the servant state. This king's opinion is a defensive battle, Gilgamesh said. This king told the Uruk people a few days ago that the 5th Uruk dynasty will be destroyed, and humans will be destroyed in half a year, Gilgamesh said while looking out the window. This king is no longer afraid of death, and the people are very active in living, didn't you see it? Gilgamesh was right. On the way here, Wuming saw a prosperous scene. Prosperous. There was no despair on the people's faces, only hope for tomorrow. The 5th Uruk dynasty is destined to be weak, but the humans of the 6th dynasty will be active, so I will not take the initiative to attack. In addition, Gilgamesh had another reason. If he used all his strength to eliminate Tiamat and the other two pillar goddesses, the mastermind behind the burning of humanity would arrange new enemies and even new plans. Cracking the singularity too early would alert the enemy. After all, Chaldea and the others were now working on the first singularity. According to the difficulty of the singularity, the Uruk was likely to be the last singularity. If this singularity was rescued by Wu Ming and the others, after Chaldea cleared the sixth singularity, it was likely that new singularities or even more would appear. Wu Ming and Gilgamesh both understood this, so Gilgamesh chose a defensive battle, and Wu Ming gave up the savior title and accepted Siduri's summon. But even if he accepted Siduri's summon, Wu Ming's master was not Siduri, but the holy grail that remained in Wu Ming's body. After all, the fifth Uruk dynasty will eventually come to an end. This is an irresistible history. Gilgamesh said indifferently. That's also true. After all, we haven't figured out the true identity of the other two pillar goddesses. It's not wise to act rashly. Wu Ming also nodded. But, we can't let the Uruk fall too early. Then, Wu Ming stood up. Gil, you should know about the Holy Grail War, right? Wu Ming asked Gil. Of course, this king knows about it. I accidentally saw it with my clairvoyance. This king originally intended to summon 7 servants to help fight against the demonic beasts. Gilgamesh waved his hand and smiled a little uninterestedly. After all, it's better than nothing. There's no time to lose. Follow this king's summon in this tower. Gilgamesh didn't leave the room and directly engraved the summoning circle in the room. Don't you need my help? Even for you, summoning multiple servants as a human is not a small burden. Wu Ming asked. Wu Ming was now using the Holy Grail in his body as a medium. If possible, Gilgamesh could also let Wu Ming summon servants. No, this king can do it. Don't underestimate this king, Hyenryong. Gilgamesh smiled and refused Wu Ming's proposal. Wu Ming smiled helplessly. Then, holding the divine axe in the clay book, Gilgamesh stood in front of the circle and began to chant. Heroes of all ages, respond to this king's summon and seek refuge under this king. Buzz dash, the magic circle lit up. Because it was an unusual summoning ritual of the Holy Grail War, Gilgamesh didn't use a special spell. He just injected magic into the magic circle. In an instant, 7 figures appeared from the magic circle. Saber, Okita Soki, I will serve you sincerely as a samurai. Pwa, a young woman who looked like a samurai held a sheathed Japanese katana and respectfully knelt in front of Gilgamesh, and then she spat out blood. Lancer, Sparta King Leonidas, my king, use me as you wish. Oh. A muscular man with a red cloak and a golden helmet whose face could not be seen clearly and a spear in his hand began to roar angrily. Archer, Ba Guzan, at the king's service. A woman wearing a cloth armor, a long sword, a long bow, and a long sword also knelt on the ground behind Minamoto Yashitsugu. Caster Merlin, in response to the king's summon, I come here, oh, isn't this a villo? A white-clothed old man smiled at Wu Ming. Assassin, Fuma Kotaro, please take care of me. A young man wearing a ninja outfit and a wide scarf knelt beside Ba Guzan. Berserker, Ibaraki Dojo, is there anything delicious here? He. The ghost named Ibaraki Dojo made a strange laugh and looked at everyone with a smile. Ruler Amakusa Shiro Shurgen, I have arrived here in response to the summons. You are. So that's how it is. What an ill-fated relationship. Amakusa Shiro Shurgen saw Wu Ming and instantly recognized him. Writer, Uruk Hyenryong, welcome to Mesopotamia in 2600 BC. Wu Ming also reported his rank. Welcome to your arrival, now you are lucky to be under this king's command and witness the end of the Uruk. Gilgamesh looked at everyone with a smile. At this point, a total of 8 riders of 7 ranks, including additional ranks, descended to Uruk. Chapter 388. 8 servants descended on Uruk. Among them, Okita Soki, Leonidas, Ba Guzan, Fuma Kotaro, Ibaraki Dojo, and Shiro Amakusa, a total of 6 servants were sent to the front line by Gilgamesh. Leonidas and Ba-Guzan were both generals, so they were sent to the front line to lead the troops. Okita Soki, although she was like an assassin, she could also destroy the enemy's elite units, so she was also sent to the front line. As a berserker, Ibaraki Dojo naturally went to the battlefield to kill the enemy. Fuma Kotaro was responsible for collecting information and passing it back and forth between the front line and the rear. And Shiro Amakusa was responsible for the command work. After all, Shiro Amakusa was also a sage. Whether it was Leonidas, Ba-Guzan, Soki, or even Fuma Kotaro, they were just generals. Although some of these generals also had some commanding ability, it was better to send a commander to command them. Furthermore, if it was Shiro Amakusa, it would be quite easy for him to lead a group of local generals. And Shiro Amakusa had another task, which was to monitor Ibaraki Dojo. Among the summoned servants, Ibaraki Dojo was the only one who was difficult to restrain. Moreover, Ibaraki Dojo was a ghost. If he was sent to the front line, it was inevitable that Ibaraki Dojo would rebel. Therefore, Shiro Amakusa's task was to monitor Ibaraki Dojo in addition to integrating the team's situation. As heroes, they did not refuse. After all, saving humans was something they were happy to do. In this way, Merlin, Wuming, and Gilgamesh were left in the rear tower. Today, this king is going to deal with the accumulated government affairs. You two stay here for the time being. If you're bored, you can go shopping. With that, Gilgamesh left. Later, Merlin and Wuming were driven out of the tower and went to the street to start their shopping trip. After using a technique to reduce their presence, Merlin and Wuming leisurely strolled through the streets, watching the bustling scene around them. I didn't expect you to come as a servant. Did you have enough of Avalon and want to come out? Don't tell me you came here because you want to save humans, Wuming teased Merlin. Merlin didn't have such thoughts. As a half-human, half-nightmare existence, although he could feel the pain of humans, he couldn't understand the meaning of this pain. This was the nature of Merlin. How could that be? I'm very worried about the crisis of mankind. If mankind is destroyed, I will also be affected. Although I can't understand human feelings, I still like a happy ending. Merlin smiled slyly as he looked at his friend. Since Merlin was summoned, he had been looking at Wuming with a sly smile. Wuming even suspected that Merlin wasn't summoned by Gilgamesh, but appeared as a servant on his own initiative. You already know I'm here, but you still came as a servant. You came out of Avalon, who would believe that you're not looking for fun? Wuming said casually. Don't say that. We're old friends who haven't seen each other for many years. I came here to see you. Merlin still had a smile on his face. Since you can travel through time and space, you should go to other singularities to help mankind. When you're at the 6th singularity, remember to take care of the queen. Although she has grown, she has gradually lost her love. Although Merlin was still smiling, Wuming heard a trace of pleading in his tone. Merlin had always treated Artoria as his daughter. On the other hand, Wuming, cough, as the one who captured the heart of my daughter, you have to take responsibility, my friend. Merlin begged. If Artoria is here, of course, I will go back and take care of her. No matter how much she grows, she is still a little girl. Wuming said matter-of-factly. By the way, you have the clairvoyance, and you also saw the last master of Chaldea. So, what do you think of Tachika? Wuming stopped looking at Merlin's sly face and talked about other things. Tachika, ah. Although she is still a little immature, I have seen her performance in Winterwood City. As for now, she is already very good. Merlin nodded with satisfaction. But, by the way, what's the situation with the woman who was once your master? You took care of her so much. Did you abandon her and fall in love with someone else? Merlin said teasingly while looking at Wuming. Merlin looked at Wuming with a smile on his face. He wanted to keep the goodies within the family. Olga Marie is just a little girl who lacks love. As a servant, I should care about her. Wuming said casually. What was the so-called pure bond? He and Olga Marie were, well, not accepting any rebuttals. Even our king did not receive such care from you. Let me tell you in advance, the sixth singularity has our king, and it is a grown-up king. This made Wu Ming a little surprised. Merlin's eyes could only see what happened in the present, but not the future or the past. In other words, the sixth singularity had something to do with the Knights of the Round Table. I always feel that you have done something bad. Wu Ming looked at Merlin with some contempt. How could that be? I just gave that person a little help. Merlin continued with that sly smile. It would be strange if I believe you. Wu Ming no longer looked at Merlin. Well, then, I will leave for a while. After all, the identity of the two pillar goddesses has not been investigated. Wu Ming stopped and said to Merlin. Gilgamesh said before. If you have the ability, you can explore the southern part of Mesopotamia. The north has been invaded by magical beasts. Even if the three goddesses alliance, they will not act together. Then goodbye, I'm almost done shopping. I will go find King Gilgamesh first. I don't want to do the hard work of running. Merlin said lazily. Don't want to run, I think King Gilgamesh will soon give you a task. Wu Ming smiled mischievously. Thank you for your kind words. Then, Merlin walked in the direction of the tower, and Wu Ming also walked out of the Uruk city. Outside the city, Wu Ming looked at the north. At present, there is only one kind of magical beast, and for the time being, there is no need to worry about Tiamat's attack. For some reason, Tiamat did not appear. It seemed that she was constantly producing a magical beast army. Then, I will go to the south and take a look. With that said, Wu Ming's figure swayed, and then, a giant dragon soared into the sky. Chapter 389. Flapping his wings, Wu Ming looked down at the land of Mesopotamia. Along the way, he even killed a few lone demonic beasts that came out of nowhere. However, Wu Ming noticed a problem. Like mass-produced clones, not only did these demonic beasts look the same, they were all wild beasts similar to the red-furred lion. Through his own senses, Wu Ming noticed that these demonic beasts had abnormally short lives. It was as if they were soldiers born for war, Wu Ming said as he looked at the corpses of the demonic beasts. How sad. Has Tiamat fallen to this extent? Although Wu Ming was not really a descendant of Tiamat, because of the connection between them in the legend, Wu Ming still cared about Tiamat. After shaking his head, Wu Ming no longer thought about anything else. He transformed into a giant dragon again and flew into the sky, towards the south. What a nostalgic scene, Wu Ming said. Back then, he came to Mesopotamia by accident. Later on, he became the protector of the Uruk and Gilgamesh's teacher. Although there were many gods in Mesopotamia back then, these gods were quite obedient. Only a few gods like Ishtar liked to cause trouble. Now that the gods had disappeared, the demonic beasts had begun to wreak havoc in the north. Although it was not that the people had no way of making a living, it was not much better. Just like the few lone demonic beasts that Wu Ming encountered earlier, only God knew where they came from to the rear of the Uruk. If a normal person encountered them, there would only be one outcome: Mesopotamia was not small. Wu Ming could not protect all the people of Mesopotamia all the time. Therefore, Wu Ming could only eliminate the demonic beasts that he encountered. After arriving at the southern city of Mesopotamia, Wu Ming noticed something unusual. Forest? That's right. There was a forest before Wu Ming. In the south of Uruk, the land that was originally flat in Wu Ming's memory had now become a forest. The original southernmost city, Elidu, had been completely swallowed by the forest. Of course, it was not impossible for the environment to have changed after Wu Ming left for so long. However, this was the barren land of Mesopotamia. Although the Euphrates River and the Tigris River ran through the land of Mesopotamia was still barren. Although it was possible to plant crops that could survive normally, it was rare to see a forest like this in Mesopotamia. Only the northernmost part of Mesopotamia, which was close to the border of Mesopotamia, had large fir forests. Other than that, there were no forests in Uruk or any other place. Not to mention, Wu Ming could tell that the forest in the distance was not a local species. It's a bit like a tropical rainforest, Wu Ming said as he flew in the sky and looked at the forest in the distance. Apart from that, the rainforest also contained an extremely strong mana. If Wu Ming was not close to it, he would not have noticed it. This place is just giving away 300 taels of silver. Wu Ming sneered. If Gilgamesh were here, he would definitely attach great importance to this place. Due to the high concentration of mana in the atmosphere, ordinary people in this era did not pay much attention to forests with strong mana. If an ordinary person were to approach this forest, they would instantly feel that something was wrong and would choose to escape, not to mention whether they could adapt and survive in this era. This was because this forest with a high concentration of mana was like a poisonous forest to them. The genes engraved in their bones would urge them to leave, and they would die if they continued to go deeper. However, such a forest was like swimming in water to Wu Ming. It did not affect him at all. Wu Ming looked down at Ur City. The people in the south were the furthest away from the front line of the magical beasts in the north, so they seemed to be the safest. Wu Ming then flapped his wings and flew towards Ur City, ready to gather some information. After about 10 minutes, a figure walked out of Ur City. This person was Wu Ming. Wu Ming revealed his identity. The mayor of Ur City did not suspect him. In his opinion, Qianruyang's holy aura could not be faked. The mayor of Ur City immediately received Wu Ming and told Wu Ming the news. It appeared suddenly. Wu Ming looked at the rainforest in the distance thoughtfully. According to the mayor of Ur City, this forest appeared a few days ago, and the border city in the south, Eridu, had stopped contacting Ur City. The mayor of Ur City had also sent a message to the Uruk city where Gilgamesh was and asked for help. Unfortunately, the communication technology was outdated in BC, and it seemed that their message had not reached Uruk yet. After that, Wu Ming directly revealed his dragon form outside Ur City. He ignored the cries of surprise and worship of the citizens of Ur City behind him and flew straight towards the rainforest. When he flew above the rainforest, the mana that hit him was like the hot air that hit him when he walked out of an air-conditioned room. Wu Ming frowned. There's a trace of divinity in the mana. It seems that this place is the residence of a certain goddess. Divinity was a mysterious thing. It could be said that people without divinity could not sense it through their physical bodies. They could only rely on instruments. There's a city called Eridu to the south of Ur City. It's very likely that the goddess has directly occupied Eridu and treated it as her own territory. Wu Ming analyzed. He did not know which goddess this was, and he did not know if the citizens of Eridu were still alive. However, he could confirm that the goddess of this rainforest was not a local goddess. The gods of Mesopotamia would not have anything to do with rainforests. When it came to rainforests, the easiest place to think of would be Latin America. Could it be a god from the Mayan divine system or the Aztec divine system? Wu Ming pondered. With that thought, Wu Ming decided to just barge in and take a look. With his strength as a rider, even if he could not defeat the other party, he could still escape. At this moment, creatures flew out from the rainforest one after another. When he took a closer look, he realized that they were ancient pterosaurs. Ancient pterosaurs? Seems like I've been underestimated. Wu Ming said helplessly. Roar. Countless ancient pterosaurs roared angrily and rushed toward Wu Ming, who was many times larger than them. These pterosaurs had sharp mouths and sharp claws that shone with a cold light. They looked extremely dangerous. However, to Wu Ming, who had grade A durability, they were no threat at all. Clang, clang, clang. The group of pterosaurs collided with Wu Ming, producing countless sounds of metal colliding. They're not afraid of me. It seems that these are all controlled by that goddess. To Wu Ming, who could influence and control fantasy breeds, these pterosaurs had ignored his suppression and attacked him. There was no doubt that they were controlled by someone. Roar. In an instant, Wu Ming roared angrily and released his dragon power, directly killing this group of pterosaurs. Then, Wu Ming looked at a certain spot in the forest and flew over. Chapter 390. Wuming landed, and what he saw was a city surrounded by countless vines and trees. There was no one in the city, but there were traces of human life in the surroundings. It seemed like it had been there for the past few days. Sure enough, Enrich Metropolis has become the territory of that goddess. Wuming said as expected. Because his dragon form was somewhat restricted in Enrich Metropolis, Wuming removed his noble phantasm and turned into his human form. Then, Wuming looked at the vines that were in the way and thought of something. Come out, Fun Baba. Wuming waved his hand, and a white spear jumped out of Wuming's sleeve and merged into the ground. Woo! Following a whimpering sound, a green creature that looked like a bear or a deer with two horns on its head emerged from the ground. Just like climbing up from the water to land, Fun Baba's appearance did not have any effect on the ground. Woo woo woo! After coming out, Fun Baba rubbed against Wuming like a spoiled child, and softly whimpered. Although Wuming's dragon form was much bigger than Fun Baba, with Wuming's current human form, Fun Baba would swallow Wuming in one bite. Moreover, with Fun Baba's love for Wuming, if he was not careful, Fun Baba might really swallow Wuming in one bite. Sorry, I haven't seen you in a long time. It's my fault, forgive me. Wuming touched Fun Baba lovingly and said with a bitter smile. Business is more important, I'll make it up to you in the future. Wuming touched Fun Baba's head again and became serious. Woo woo, Fun Baba reluctantly called out, but it didn't bother Wuming anymore. Fun Baba gently lifted its leg, and an invisible force spread out. The vines and trees that were in the way moved away as if they had grown legs. Fun Baba was the mythical beast of the forest. Something of this level was still possible. Let's go, Fun Baba. Wuming jumped onto Fun Baba's huge head. Fun Baba whimpered and began to move towards the inner part of Eldo. After entering Eidolon, Wuming noticed that there were not many trees or vines on the streets. Do they not want these people to go out, or are they simply guarding against my arrival? Wuming was more inclined to the former. After all, the obstacles could not stop Wuming from moving forward. However, Wuming felt that the other party's goal was the latter. After all, there were traces of human activity at the entrance of Eldo. At this time, people started to poke their heads out of the houses in Eldo. The people of Eldo are all fine? Wuming was surprised. However, this also explained why there were traces of human activity at the entrance of Eldo. This is Master Hyunryong. It's Master Hyunryong and the mythical beast Fun Baba. Master Hyunryong, are you here to save us? Master Hyunryong. In an instant, countless people of Eldo who saw Wuming and Fun Baba ran out and knelt before Wuming, begging for Wuming to save them. However, most of these people were women and children. Only a small portion of them were men. Could it be that they were sacrificed? Wuming thought. Everyone, please calm down. Then, Wuming opened his mouth. His voice was filled with light as it entered everyone's ears. In an instant, everyone calmed down. Wuming directly used his holy aura to calm the people's unstable emotions. Master Hyunryong, you are right, Master Hyunryong, Master Hyunryong, you must save us. Everyone calmed down. Although they were still begging for Wuming to save them, their tone was very calm. So, what happened here? Wuming jumped down from the Fun Baba and asked. After a while, everyone told Wuming everything that happened. King Gilgamesh had returned and ruled Uruk as a wise king. Their vassal cities were able to benefit from this and develop well. Not long after, news of a magical beast invasion came from the north. King Gilgamesh organized an army to fight against the magical beasts. Since they were in the southernmost region, they didn't have to worry about being attacked by demonic beasts. Although they would occasionally encounter one or two demonic beasts that came to the south, the people of Eidolon were still able to subdue and kill them. However, at some point in time, the whole of Eldo was surrounded by forests overnight. Vines and trees also appeared in Eldo. After that, a woman who claimed to be a goddess came. She said that she was the feathered serpent god. After the people of Eldo witnessed the power of the feathered serpent god, she announced that this place had become her territory. However, to Wuming's surprise, the feathered serpent god did not do anything evil after ruling Eldo. The people of Eldo continued to live their lives. However, good things did not last long. Magical beasts would attack from time to time. Although the people of Eldo were able to subdue and kill them, there were still casualties. Moreover, the number of magical beasts had increased over the past few days. Therefore, the feathered serpent god made a deal with the people. I can protect you from the magical beasts, but you must send a man to my temple every day. In order to survive, after weighing the pros and cons, the people agreed to the feathered serpent god's request. In the following days, the people would choose a man and send him to the feathered serpent god's temple in Eldo. Eldo was not attacked by magical beasts again. However, the people found that none of the men who were sent to the temple returned. No one knew if they were dead or alive. Gradually, the people of Eldo became afraid. However, because of the magical beasts outside, they did not dare to break the contract until Wuming arrived. I understand. Everyone, go back to your houses. I will talk to the feathered serpent god. Don't worry. Using his holy aura again, Wuming persuaded the people to go back to their houses. Otherwise, as Wuming expected, the men would have been used as sacrifices. However, if it was really the feathered serpent god, the sacrifice would be a joke. The feathered serpent god hated living sacrifices. Therefore, either the feathered serpent god was not the feathered serpent god, or there was something else going on. Let's go, Funbaba. Let's go take a look at the temple in Eldo. Wuming jumped on Funbaba's head and patted Funbaba's head. Woo-woo, accompanied by the sound of Funbaba's footsteps and cries, the huge green beast headed towards the temple built by the feathered serpent god. Chapter 391. Because Funbaba was not small, Funbaba quickly brought Wuming to the temple located at the edge of Edo. The Mayan pyramidal building towered in front of Wuming, surrounded by a mysterious and lush forest. Fortunately, the temple and the forest were located at the edge of Edo. If the temple and the forest were placed in the center of Edo, the entire city would have become a forest. Funbaba stopped and did not move forward. Woo! Funbaba stopped in front of the forest. After trying for a moment, it shook its head and let out a whimper. This time, it was really whimpering. Fortunately, Wuming quickly stabilized himself when Funbaba shook its head. Otherwise, he would have fallen. Funbaba also knew that it had made a mistake. Coupled with the fact that it could no longer control the trees, Funbaba's whimpers became even deeper. Okay, just be careful next time. Wuming patted Funbaba's head. After stabilizing himself, Wuming looked at the pyramid-shaped temple and the surrounding forest. As expected, these trees are no longer under your control. Wuming also guessed that there would be times when Funbaba would not be able to control them. The feathered god was known as the god of agriculture. It was easy for her to hasten the growth of plants. Regardless of whether or not the other party was the real feathered god, at the very least, she had the ability to hasten the growth of the forest overnight. From the location of the other party's temple, the forest must be under her control. It was reasonable that Funbaba could not control it. After all, Funbaba was a mythical creature of the forest, and the feathered god was a god-level existence in Aztec mythology. Wuming jumped off Funbaba's head and said to Funbaba, "In that case, wait for me here. If this is the real feathered god, I believe that as a good god, she will not choose to fight with me." After all, the feathered serpent god was a kind deity. As someone who loved humans as much as Wuming, the two of them should not attack. However, he couldn't rule out the possibility that the other party wasn't the feathered serpent god, or that even if the other party was the feathered serpent god, the feathered serpent god wouldn't hesitate to attack. Wuming was also confused about this. The Quetzalcoatl seemed to be on the opposite side of the people of Mesopotamia. Therefore, Wuming wanted to talk to her after learning that the goddess here called herself the Quetzalcoatl. Wuming wanted to figure out what exactly the three goddesses' alliance was and what their respective objectives were. Woo-woo, Funbaba responded and nodded. Then, can the leopard over there come out? You've been following us all the way. Wu Ming said casually to a certain spot in the forest. Rustle, rustle. As soon as Wu Ming finished speaking, the forest in the place he was looking at shook, and the leaves rustled. It was just that this voice gave people a feeling of being startled. Wah, wah, what? You actually found the super hidden leopard man. Damn it, looks like he's a strong opponent. With a swoosh, a guy wearing a yellow-spotted leopard suit scurried out. Then, he looked at Wu Ming as if he was facing a formidable enemy. This made Wu Ming feel a little helpless. In fact, Wu Ming had felt that someone was watching him ever since he came to Elida, but until now, Wu Ming had not found out where the person who was watching him was. After that, Wu Ming just wanted to trick the person who was watching him, but he did not expect that it would actually work. Are you still a god? Wu Ming looked at the guy who called himself the leopard man with some surprise. Wu Ming could feel divinity from this guy who called himself the leopard man, which meant that this guy was a goddess. However, this guy seemed like a joke no matter how he looked at it. A goddess wearing a leopard coat. Please forgive Wu Ming for not knowing what a goddess likes. Wahahaha, I didn't expect you to have such a good eye. That's right, this goddess is the leopard man. Wahahaha, the leopard man who thought that Wu Ming was scared by his identity laughed proudly, but this way, he was even more inconsistent with the word goddess. After thinking about Ishtar, and looking at the leopard in front of him who was laughing shamelessly, Wu Ming helplessly covered his face. Woo-woo. Even Fanbaba could not accept it. How could a goddess be such an existence? Fanbaba, she's yours. Wu Ming did not even look at her, and directly pointed at the leopard man who was still laughing. Woo-woo. Fanbaba replied, then lightly stomped his feet, and several vines rose from under the leopard man's feet. What? The leopard man was shocked, and quickly jumped out of the vine-catching area. It had to be said that although as a goddess, the leopard man was not qualified at all, as a warrior, the leopard man was undoubtedly qualified. In terms of monitoring prey in the dense forest, the leopard man was also an impeccable hunter. Although the density of magic in the dense forest was too high, and the detection of magic was affected, even with Wu Ming's vigilance, he still did not find the leopard man's position, which was enough to show how powerful the leopard man was. And the reason why Wu Ming gave such a powerful leopard man to Fanbaba to deal with was because Fanbaba was also not a weak existence. According to the legends, Gilgamesh and Enkidu worked together to defeat the divine beast of the forest, Fanbaba, and obtained countless treasures. From this point of view, Fanbaba seemed to be very weak. But don't forget, if Gilgamesh and Enkidu worked together to defeat it, how could it be weak? The answer was naturally no. Fanbaba had been using this stance, but in fact, Fanbaba also had other stances, but because of Wu Ming, Fanbaba did not use any other stances. Even Gilgamesh and Enkidu would find it difficult to deal with it. Seeing that the attack did not hit, Fanbaba quickly released another attack, and several vines once again appeared under the leopard man's feet. This time, the vines were controlled by Fanbaba at an extremely tricky angle, and ordinary people would not be able to dodge them. You're really fast, but you're still not as fast as me. The leopard man unexpectedly dodged the attack again, and this time, the leopard man's expression became serious. Woo-woo. Fanbaba was not to be outdone and cried out. Wu Ming looked at the leopard man in surprise, but because of his trust in Fanbaba, Wu Ming directly entered the forest. Try to capture Fanbaba alive. Wu Ming instructed. Woo-woo-woo-woo-woo, Fanbaba replied, and at the same time, said a few words to the leopard man. What? You actually dare to say, take me down in 5 rounds, then I'll let you see how powerful I, leopard man, am. Wu Ming did not expect the leopard man to be able to converse with Fanbaba, and he felt a little helpless. I always feel that this leopard man is actually a funny character, Wu Ming said as he walked through the forest. And just as Wu Ming walked through the forest, he was greeted by a big sister's hug. Let's wrestle. Chapter 392. Let's wrestle. Accompanied by a burst of unusually happy laughter, a seemingly weak arm extended towards Wu Ming. However, this arm gave Wu Ming a very dangerous feeling. If I'm caught by this arm, I'll be finished even if I don't die. Wu Ming was shocked. In an instant, the blonde lady grabbed Wu Ming and fiercely threw Wu Ming over her shoulder. Boom! Wu Ming's body slammed into the ground. The ground around Wu Ming cracked and made a loud noise. Ah, it's a substitute. The blonde lady let go of Wu Ming, who had fallen to the ground. Then, Wu Ming, who had been thrown to the ground by the blonde lady, changed. At a speed visible to the naked eye, Wu Ming's body turned into wood. Using his clothes as a medium, Wu Ming successfully escaped Quizzer's fatal fall. I don't dare to be caught by that move of yours. Even if my durability is B grade, I wouldn't dare to try. At this time, Wu Ming's voice came from behind the blonde lady. After all, it would be troublesome if he died. The blonde lady turned her head and saw Wu Ming standing not far away, unharmed. His upper body was naked. Oh, you've taken off all your clothes as soon as we meet. It really makes me a little embarrassed. The blonde lady said happily without any embarrassment. Because the density of magic in the dense forest was too high, and the blonde lady was too fast, Wu Ming did not notice her approach until he saw her. Now, Wu Ming looked seriously at the blonde lady who was exposed in front of him. Wu Ming felt a high level of divinity from her. In this case, presumably, this goddess was not lying. With such a high level of divinity, no one could impersonate her except a god of the main god level. She was probably the Quetzalcoatl. You must be the feathered serpent god. Wu Ming did not beat around the bush. That's right, big sister, I am the Quetzalcoatl. You can call me Quetzalcoatl, the Yura Qianryong. Quetzalcoatl smiled at Wu Ming. Although Wu Ming was a little surprised by the feathered serpent god's gender, he could still accept it. After all, there were so many examples. It seems that the pterosaurs outside the rainforest were controlled by you. Coupled with the greeting gift just now, it really surprised me. Wu Ming said with a smile. After all, I don't really want to see you, Yura Qianryong. In an instant, Quizzer's face looked as if she had put on a performance that transcended the horizon. She was abnormally terrified. Looking at Quetzalcoatl, who looked more like an evil god than a good god, Wu Ming was very calm. I want to know about the three goddesses' alliance and your respective goals. That's why I'm here. Wu Ming acted as if he did not see Quetzalcoatl's performance and asked directly. Also, the residents of Aidu told me that a man is offered as a sacrifice to you every day. I want to know what's going on. However, Quetzalcoatl smiled. Didn't I say, Yura Qianryong, I don't welcome your arrival? If you leave now, I can let bygones be bygones. But if you continue to stay, I'll have to use my super wrestling skills. Quetzalcoatl's smile reached her ears as she looked at Wu Ming with an abnormally terrifying expression. I understand. Wu Ming closed his eyes, looking as if he had understood. Wu Ming opened his eyes abruptly and said seriously, then, let's have a fight. The winner will listen to the loser. Whether it's killing, trampling, enslaving, or toying with the loser, it's all up to you. How about it? Oh, it's quite interesting, isn't it? I accept, big sister. Quetzalcoatl instantly cancelled her performance and reverted to her loving big sister appearance, agreeing to Wu Ming's suggestion. Then, in less than a few seconds, Quetzalcoatl used her performance again and smiled maliciously at Wu Ming. In that case, you'd better be prepared to die, Qianryong. Then, as if he had achieved his goal, Wu Ming's lips curled up into a smile. With this, the contract is established. As soon as Wu Ming finished speaking, the sound of chains could be heard. Clatter, what? The shimmering golden chains wrapped around Quetzalcoatl, causing her to cry out in surprise. Quetzalcoatl looked at the center of the cracked ground behind her. The pristine white robe seemed to be worn by an invisible person, hovering above the ground like a ghost. Several chains shot out from the robe and extended to Quetzalcoatl's body. The chains that bound Quetzalcoatl came from this robe. Without a doubt, this was the doing of her enemy, Qianryong. You bastard! How dare you sneak attack me? Quizzard glared at Wu Ming as if she was being treated unfairly. Little did she know that she was the one who had started the sneak attack. I've already said that the contract is established. From then on, our battle will begin. Why, is Lord Quetzalcoatl going back on your word? Wu Ming crossed his arms and looked at Quetzalcoatl with a smile. You despicable bastard. Watch me break these chains. Quetzalcoatl displayed her irritable yen-yi and said rather angrily. Then, she began to struggle in vain. By the way, let me tell you something. As long as you're a god, you can forget about breaking free after being bound by this chain. Even if Tiamat came, she wouldn't be able to break free either, Wu Ming said rather arrogantly. Quetzalcoatl ignored Wu Ming and struggled to break free of the chains. However, no matter how hard she tried, she could not break free from the shackles of the golden chains. That was not all. Quetzalcoatl found that her magical power, divine power, and other powers were all bound by these golden chains and could not be used at all. Damn it. Where the hell did you get these chains from? Not only can I not break free, but my powers are also sealed. Even the Enkidu isn't this perverted. Quetzalcoatl gave up on struggling and said irritably. What? You're not going to struggle anymore? Wu Ming laughed. Of course, Quetzalcoatl could not break free of the Enkidu. The Enkidu was something used to control the god of law, so it was impossible for Quetzalcoatl, who had extremely high divinity, to break free. If it was the original version of Enkidu, Quasar would still be able to break free from the shackles of Enkidu by relying on his own attributes, but only by a little. Her strength had not reached A rank, so it was impossible for her to break free of the Enkidu's shackles through pure strength. Moreover, Wu Ming's Enkidu was the manifestation of the Enkidu that was attached to the main body of the Great Origin, Wu Ming. Once a god like Quetzalcoatl was trapped by the Enkidu that was no longer what it used to be. With the current Enkidu's ability, even Tiamat would not be able to do anything about it. Ah, I've failed. I admit defeat. You win. Can you let go of me now? Quetzalcoatl removed her facial expression and revealed the look of a big sister again. She smiled gently and looked at Wu Ming. And so, the battle between Hyunryong and the feathered serpent god ended with Hyunryong insta-killing the feathered serpent god. After hearing Quetzalcoatl admit defeat, Wu Ming released the shackles of the Enkidu on Quetzalcoatl. Then, let's start with the questions. Chapter 393. Wu Ming was not worried that Quetzalcoatl would go back on her word, because the agreement between Wu Ming and Quasar would be upheld by the world. Most importantly, this was the end of the gods' era, and both Wu Ming and Quasar were gods, so there was no need for them to sign any contract. They only needed to make a verbal agreement. Both Quasar and Wu Ming were well aware of this, so Quasar directly admitted defeat and let Wu Ming untie. Wu Ming did not hesitate in the slightest. So, what do you want to ask? Quasar asked casually. Quasar, who had become Wu Ming's slave, was not worried that Wu Ming would do anything to her. She looked very relaxed. Then let's talk about the disappearance of men in Idu first. After all, if Quasar was really the feathered serpent god, then the disappearance of men would become a point of suspicion. After all, the feathered serpent god hated living sacrifices. They, of course, are wrestling with me. Quasar said matter-of-factly. Because none of them can take a single hit from me, I chose to have the residents of Idu sacrifice a man every day. They are all resting in my temple now, and when they have recovered, they will wrestle with me. Quasar looked rather distressed that no one was wrestling with her. Ugh. Wu Ming did not expect that Quasar would ask the residents of Idu to sacrifice a man every day just to have someone to wrestle with. Although Wu Ming did not know much about wrestling, Quasar seemed to have used wrestling techniques when she attacked Wu Ming at the beginning. How much did she like wrestling? Wu Ming remembered that the feathered serpent god did not seem to have any wrestling attributes. How did her hobby of wrestling come to be? Seriously, it's rare that you don't fall, but you can't live on? Wu Ming helplessly covered his face. Of course. Wrestling is a religion. If possible, I want to become the god of wrestling. Quasar did not have the slightest bit of self-awareness. Instead, he wanted to become the god of wrestling. Next question. What is your relationship with the mother of magical beasts in the north, Tiamat? Wu Ming asked. After all, one of the two pillar goddesses was in the south and the other was in the north. One was waging a war against the magical beasts, while the other was secretly expanding her territory. Wu Ming didn't believe that the two of them had nothing to do with each other. How could it be so coincidental that they were doing it at the same time? Ah, you've really hit the nail on the head. Quizhar smiled in surprise. I'm in an alliance with them, Quizhar said. After a while, Quizhar told Wu Ming everything. The mastermind had set up the Holy Grail at this singularity and used it as a medium to summon himself and Tiamat in the north. He left a message that whoever obtained the Uruk's Holy Grail first would become the new goddess of this era and control the fate of this era. Therefore, the two pillar goddesses competed separately. After all, the contents of the three goddesses' contract did not state that they could not disclose information about the other goddesses. Therefore, it was fine for Quizhar to reveal information to Wu Ming. It's the native goddess of Mesopotamia, the mistress of the underworld, Ereshkigal, Quizhar said the goddess name. It's her? Wu Ming was a little shocked. Wu Ming finally understood why the third goddess was not assigned an offensive task. Ereshkigal was born to manage the underworld. No god liked to manage it, and she could not leave the underworld for the rest of her life. She could only stay in the underworld. Therefore, Ereshkigal could not attack the Uruk on land. However, because Ereshkigal could not leave the shackles of the underworld, she had more powerful authority. Even if she was in the underworld, she was invincible. No god or human who came to the underworld could resist her. Even if she could not be on land, Ereshkigal could still operate from below the city. She could pull the souls of humans on the ground into the underworld in an instant. This created a terrifying scene. The bodies of humans were cold in their sleep, and the entire city became a ghost town. This is really useful information. Wu Ming nodded. This trip was not a waste. Since you have no intention of killing humans, how about we stop here? Wu Ming looked at Quizhar. If he could solve the problem of Quizhar before she was in danger, Wu Ming's trip from the Uruk to the extreme south was not in vain. Chapter 394. Apart from that, Wu Ming had another idea. After all, Quizhar was also a goddess. Even if she could not attack the other pillar goddesses, she could still keep the other goddesses in check. She could also deal with the magical beasts. After all, Quizhar was already doing that. She was protecting the people in her territory from the magical beasts. After all, the restriction of the contract was that he could not attack the goddess. Therefore, Wu Ming wanted to rope Quizhar into his side. Wu Ming believed that with Quizhar's addition, the Uruk side would be like a tiger that had grown wings. Even if it did not work, it would be fine as long as Quizhar did not expand her territory and attack the Uruk. Sure, Quizhar said with a smile. You agreed so decisively? Wu Ming was a little surprised. After all, I was defeated. Even if it was a sneak attack, I would still admit defeat. That's what it means to be inferior. Looking at Quizhar like this, Wu Ming could not help but think of the legend of the feathered serpent god. Due to being drunk by other gods with ulterior motives, the country under her rule was ruined by the other gods. After the feathered serpent god woke up, she blamed herself for her mistake and decided to leave this place to reflect on herself. In other words, the feathered serpent god was a god who accepted defeat and admitted defeat. Judging from this point, the feathered serpent god was really a good god. However, in the eyes of humans, she was still a strange god. If you want to contribute a man every day, you should make it clear. If it's just wrestling, it's not a big deal. You can also let them go home. They can come over and wrestle with you every day. You can also hold a wrestling tournament and train these people who don't know how to wrestle. That's too unbecoming of a goddess, Quizhar responded to Wu Ming with a smile. In that case, let these men go. I'll ask King Gilgamesh. You can hold a wrestling tournament and train these people to wrestle. I'll show them to you. For people who loved wrestling, it was good to be able to watch an exciting wrestling competition. Yes, yes, you win. You have the final say. Quizhar waved her hand, indicating that she agreed with Wu Ming's words. Wu Ming looked at the regretful Quizhar and pondered for a moment before speaking. If it's wrestling, I can actually play along with you. After all, it's more interesting if the opponent is a god of the same level, isn't it? Wu Ming smiled. After all, Wu Ming and Quizhar had only exchanged a few blows before Quizhar was bound by Wu Ming's enkidu. There was no fight at all. It wasn't just Quizhar. In fact, Wu Ming also felt rather regretful. His opponent was the legendary feathered serpent god. If he didn't fight, he would be letting down this fated encounter. Really? Good. Let's wrestle first. Quizhar was overjoyed and rushed towards Wu Ming. Hey! Wait! I'm not talking about now. Come, come. I'll be very gentle. Dong! Wu Ming walked out of the temple's jungle strangely. Fan Baba, who was waiting outside, was lying there obediently. Woo-woo, seeing Wu Ming come out, Fan Baba cried out in joy. She sat up and rubbed her upper body against Wu Ming. Yo, Fan Baba. Wu Ming greeted Fan Baba, who was once again rubbing against him enthusiastically. However, Wu Ming's movements were slightly stiff. Woo-woo. Fan Baba tilted her head in confusion. It's okay, I've already solved the feathered serpent god's problem. It's just that I was chatting with the feathered serpent god just now and she was a little excited. Wu Ming said with a fake smile. Thinking of Wu Ming just now, Wu Ming felt helpless. Because he had aroused Quizhar's fighting spirit, no matter how Wu Ming persuaded her, she couldn't calm down. Therefore, Wu Ming fought with Quizhar. Then, it turned out that Wu Ming really didn't know how to wrestle and was repeatedly thrown by Quizhar. Wu Ming always felt that this was Quizhar's revenge for him using enkidu to plot against Quizhar. She didn't show any mercy at all. Fortunately, Wu Ming's own martial arts skills were good. After learning Quizhar's wrestling skills, he successfully made a scene with Quizhar. As a result, the jungle and even the land around the temple seemed to have been ravaged by a storm. What a good fall. I didn't even dare to use my strength against a human. Indeed, it's more comfortable to fall against a god of the same level. This was Quizhar's face full of joy after the incident. In that case, I'll go make arrangements for the pterosaur first. I'll send all the men in my temple back to Eric Metropolis. Then, Quizhar entered the temple and Wu Ming walked out. Wu Ming smiled at Fan Baba and touched his lower back. This guy really can't be merciful. Ouch, 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 ouch. Wu Ming touched his lower back that was injured by Quizhar's fall and said with some pain in his heart. By the way, where did the leopard man go? After all, Wu Ming had initially left the leopard man to Fan Baba to deal with. Now, Fan Baba was lying here and resting comfortably. Then, where did the leopard man go? Woo-woo, Fan Baba indicated that he didn't slack off and then pointed to his butt with his head. Then, Fan Baba lifted his butt and left this position. Then, what appeared in front of Wu Ming was a long cylindrical object that was constantly squirming. It seemed to be a person entangled in vines. After squirming twice and feeling that the thing pressing down on him was gone, a head popped out from the long cylindrical vine. Unsurprisingly, this was the leopard man's head with the jacket. The person in the vine was the leopard man. Pfft. Damn it. How dare you press the honorable leopard man under your butt? I don't think I'll forgive you. The leopard man, who only had his head exposed, roared frantically and kept squirming his body that was tied in the vines. He looked like he would rather die than submit. Looking at the leopard man like this, Wu Ming remembered what Quizhar said. When Wu Ming wrestled with Quizhar, he asked her what was the relationship between the leopard man and her. That leopard, you can play with him as you wish, just don't kill him, Quizhar said with a smile. When he thought of Quizhar's words, Wu Ming wanted to laugh. This leopard is really pitiful. Then, Wu Ming had the heart to tease the leopard. Did you know? Quizarcoatl told me that your meat is of the highest quality among the gods. As a friendly meeting between us two gods, she gave you to me. Wu-Ming squatted down and looked at the leopard man, who was in a daze. In other words, you're my slave. By the way, I haven't eaten the meat of a god before. I'm in for a treat today. Wu-Ming looked at the leopard man with a smile, but this smile looked like the smile of a demon no matter how you looked at it. How is that possible? How could Cooker betray me? You must be lying. The leopard man said, somewhat shaken. Oh, is that so? Then do you need me to prove it to you personally? With that, Wu-Ming stood up, and then a flame and a knife appeared in his hand. As if he was really going to cook the leopard man. Wu-Ming looked down at the leopard man condescendingly. Wait a minute. Don't eat me, my meat isn't delicious at all. The leopard man's face was pale, and he was so scared that his eyes rolled back. That's not up to you. Help. Cooker. Chapter 395. Wu-Ming and Funbaba left Idu. Wu-Ming told the residents of Idu the truth and promised that the Quetzalcoatl god would return the males who were sacrificed as sacrifices. He also promised that the residents of Idu would be able to go out and interact with other cities. However, in exchange for their protection, a wrestling tournament would be held every once in a while. Naturally, the residents of Eidolon agreed wholeheartedly. If they could obtain the protection of a god just by doing this, it would be a win-win situation. Now, the residents of Idu were relieved. After all, even if they were safe, it was still quite uncomfortable to not be able to rest in peace. Wu-Ming also warned Quetzalcoatl not to continue spreading the jungle. Thus, Uar City, which was supposed to be Wu-Ming's next target, was not swallowed by Quetzalcoatl's jungle. If possible, he also hoped that Quetzalcoatl would send out the pterosaur to eliminate the lone magical beasts that somehow came to the south. Quetzalcoatl naturally agreed. After that, Wu-Ming and Funbaba began their journey back to Uruk. At the same time, Wu-Ming also told the mayor of Uar City about the feathered serpent god. After that, because Wu-Ming slightly neglected Funbaba and the magical beast's attacks in the north were not that strong, Wu-Ming decided to ride on Funbaba and have a good chat with Funbaba before returning to Uruk. Because of the journey, Wu-Ming and Funbaba arrived at the wilderness near the Persian Gulf. It was now night time. Wu-Ming sat in front of a fire. A pot floated above the fire. Wu-Ming leaned against Funbaba's huge and soft body and drank a bowl of meat soup with a satisfied expression. Not far from him was the corpse of a magical beast. It was a magical beast that Wu-Ming encountered along the way. It was ambushing passers-by and was killed by Wu-Ming and made into meat soup. After all, no one said that magical beasts could not be made into food. ****, I'm starting to miss that adventure. Wu-Ming held a bowl of broth and recalled the days when he had just returned from the demonic realm, where he had learned from Skaha and was training alone outside. During that period of time, Wu-Ming was like a chivalrous hero. When he was tired, he would use the sky as his blanket and the earth as his bed. When he was hungry, he would pick wild fruits and hunt animals. When he was thirsty, he would drink spring water or dew before heading to Connaught. In Wu-Ming's eyes, Skaha was more like a teacher than a warrior. Not only did he teach Wu-Ming combat and magic, but he also taught Wu-Ming some principles of being a human being and all kinds of small knowledge. After all, Wu-Ming was an old lady who had lived for a long time. Cough, cough. Queen. Naturally, she knew a lot after living for a long time. In addition, Skaha saw Wu-Ming as his younger brother, so she taught him a lot. That included survival in the wild. However, it was not very useful for Wu-Ming. Therefore, Wu-Ming had never fallen sick and could sleep anywhere. On the other hand, Wu-Ming's stomach was beyond the stomach of a fantasy breed and could not digest anything. Therefore, survival skills in the wild were just icing on the cake. Paying attention to the dangers in the wild was a lifelong benefit for Wu-Ming. After all, even the most powerful person would make mistakes one day. Even the most powerful tiger would take a nap. Now, Wu-Ming had Funbaba by his side. With Funbaba's divine beast temperament, no wild beasts or robbers came to attack Wu Ming. As for those who were related to God, they were only followers and dependents. For example, Wu Ming and Funbaba, Quizzer and the pterosaur, Tiamat and the magical beasts. However, if there was really an attack, Wu Ming would not be afraid. After all, he had the strength. Although Wu Ming did not need to sleep, it was rare to spend a night in the wild. Wu Ming did not want to spend it all on the road. Moreover, the one who would be tired was Funbaba. Therefore, Wu Ming was going to stay in the wild with Funbaba for a night. You think so too, Funbaba? Woo-woo, Funbaba also cried, indicating that it also agreed. It was the wish of every Funbaba to be able to sleep with its master. After drinking the broth, Wu Ming tidied up and then went to sleep with Funbaba. After that, Wu Ming began to dream. He had a strange dream. Wu Ming came to a black abyss. It was as if he had fallen into a swamp. Wu Ming's movements were particularly difficult, and he could not see anything clearly. Only a sad song echoed. Wu Ming could feel the sadness in this song. A mother was helpless and sad to be abandoned by her children. Wu Ming could not help but be attracted by this song. He gradually looked for the owner of the song in the dark space, trying to drive his body back to his mother's arms. At this moment, Wu Ming heard Funbaba's cry, and then he was awakened. Woo-woo. Wu Ming suddenly opened his eyes and looked at the bright sky. His head was a little dizzy as he looked around. Funbaba put down its foreleg that hit Wu Ming's head, and then rubbed its head against Wu Ming's head. Its originally anxious appearance calmed down. Wu Ming didn't know if it was because he was hit by Funbaba or because of the dream, but now his head was quite dizzy, as if he didn't sleep well. That was definitely not a dream. Wu Ming said with some fear. If it wasn't for Funbaba hitting Wu Ming hard, I'm afraid that Wu Ming would really fall into the arms of the owner of the song, and once that happened, Wu Ming had a hunch that he would never wake up again. After all, his consciousness was transferred from his main body to his servant's body. If his consciousness was captured, then Wu Ming's servant's body would disappear, and his main body in the root would become an empty shell with only a body and soul, but no consciousness. Simply put, he would be in a vegetative state. Thank you, Funbaba. If it wasn't for you, I'm afraid I would have died this time. You've helped me a lot. Wu Ming said to Funbaba gratefully. Woo-woo, because of being praised by Wu Ming, Funbaba happily rubbed against Wu Ming. Wu Ming touched Funbaba's head and thought thoughtfully. I've never encountered such a situation before. It seems that I have to protect this point. Wu Ming's body, soul, and consciousness were all born from the root, and compared to the body, Wu Ming's soul was more powerful. Simply put, negative mental effects such as charm would not work on Wu Ming. But this time, Wu Ming almost fell into the enemy's trap while sleeping. More importantly, the pitch-black, immovable space was the interior of the origin black soil. For some reason, Wu Ming couldn't feel the root of the black mud in his dream at all. Maybe it was the enemy's trick. There's also that singing voice. Wu Ming did not recognize it even in his dream. Wu Ming had heard that singing voice before. It was the singing voice he heard when he crossed over to the mirror world in Ilya's world. This familiar feeling. Wu Ming was silent. For a moment, Wu Ming shook his head. In short, the enemy is not simply the three goddesses' alliance. There are more powerful enemies in the dark. As long as it has something to do with the black mud, it can't be underestimated. This time, Wu Ming almost fell into the trap of the song. Sorry, Funbaba, things have changed again. I have to fly back to the Uruk. You come back first, Wu Ming said to Funbaba. Woo-woo, although somewhat reluctant, Funbaba still knew that something unusual had just happened, so it nodded. Then, Funbaba turned into a white spear and integrated into Wu Ming's body. Then, Wu Ming transformed into a huge flying dragon and flew to the Uruk. After Wu Ming left, a sad song sounded on the surface of the Persian Gulf, but it disappeared instantly like an illusion. Chapter 396. After leaving the vicinity of the Persian Gulf, Wu Ming did not delay any further. He flapped his wings and flew all the way to Uruk in less than an hour. Wuming's wings made a whistling sound. Then, Wuming slowly landed in front of the Uruk city gate. "Sir Hyunryong, you're back." The soldiers guarding the city respectfully greeted the giant dragon in front of them, which was comparable to half of the Uruk city. Gilgamesh had already informed the people of Hyunryong's arrival, so the soldiers guarding the gate were not surprised by Wuming's arrival. Wuming nodded and transformed into his human form. He did not communicate too much with the soldiers. Wuming directly went to the Tower of God at the fastest speed. After all, if he was entangled with the Uruk residents, he would not be able to get away for a while. After arriving at the Tower of God, Wuming happened to meet Siduri, who was walking down the Tower of God. It seemed that Siduri was Gilgamesh's assistant, helping Gilgamesh deal with government affairs. Therefore, it was not strange to meet Chief Priest Siduri in the Tower of God. "Sir Hyunryong, you're back." Siduri bowed slightly and greeted Wuming. "Oh, it's Siduri. How is it? Is your body all right?" Wuming asked with concern. After all, it was because of him that Siduri's vitality was reduced. "It's no longer a big problem. I'm really sorry, Sir Hyunryong. As your priest, not only did I not help you, but I also caused you trouble. Siduri really deserves to die." Siduri shook her head, indicating that she was fine. Then, Siduri began to blame herself again. It had to be said that Siduri was a little too respectful to Wuming. Before Wuming left here, Siduri was also like this. She was clearly told not to be too respectful, but Siduri still believed that she should treat God with respect. Especially Hyunryong, who protected the Uruk and allowed the Uruk to develop. Especially after Enkidu's death, Siduri replaced Enkidu as Wuming's personal priest. In Siduri's opinion, she could not be compared to Enkidu at all. This thought made Siduri respect Wuming even more. In addition, not long after Siduri became Wuming's priest, Wuming left the Uruk. This made Siduri have an illusion that, did I disappoint Hyunryong and leave the Uruk? All of this made Siduri respect Wuming very much. "Siduri, I don't like humans being too respectful to gods. This includes myself." Wuming instantly looked at Siduri seriously. Siduri also remembered what Wuming said to Siduri after she became Hyunryong's priest. The reason why Hyunryong protected humans was because he hoped that humans would not have to rely on other gods and gradually become independent. There was no need to treat gods as high and mighty beings. It was okay to have an appropriate amount of respect, but too much respect was wrong. Yes, I'm very sorry, Lord Hyunryong." Siduri became even more respectful and was about to kneel down. "I say, you don't have to be so respectful to me." Wuming did not know whether to laugh or cry as he supported Siduri, who had not completely knelt down. "Yes, Lord Hyunryong," Siduri said sadly. "That's why you can't become Enkidu." Wuming's words shocked Siduri. She felt as nervous as when the teacher found out that she was copying homework. Her heart began to waver. Yes, Siduri knew that it was because of Enkidu that she was able to serve Hyunryong better now that Enkidu had left. But, this is Siduri, isn't it? Wuming looked at Siduri with a smile, then let go of her and walked towards the god's tower. Siduri remained in a half-kneeling position as she stood rooted to the ground. "I am myself." Siduri thought about Wuming's words and said meaningfully. Wuming came to the top floor of the god's tower and walked directly into the room on the top floor. "Oh, you're back, Hyunryong." Gilgamesh put down the clay tablet in his hand and looked at Wuming, who walked in. "Yes, I encountered a lot of things in the south," Wuming said tiredly. "This king can guess from your tired face. Tell this king the good news first." Gilgamesh smiled and said to Wuming. "Other than Tiamat in the north, there are 2 other pillar goddesses. They are the Quetzalcoatl of Central and South America and the goddess of the underworld of Mesopotamia. They also have the intention of attacking the Uruk. For this reason, the 3 pillar goddesses have formed the 3 Goddesses Alliance." Wuming sat on the chair beside Gilgamesh and reported his news. "This king wants the good news, Hyunryong. Gilgamesh was a little unhappy. Gilgamesh also saw that Wuming deliberately kept him in suspense. Well, good news must be set off by bad news. Next is the good news. Wuming waved his hand and smiled mischievously. Tiamat is only active in the north. With the obstruction of the servants, there is no big problem for the time being. Ereshkigal is unable to leave the underworld and was pushed to the east by the other two pillar goddesses. For the time being, there is no sign of an attack. Wuming took out the map and pointed to the demonic beasts in the north and the remote areas in the east. As for the Quetzalcoatl in the south, she used the dense forest to protect the city and nibbled away Mesopotamia little by little. Then, Wuming pointed to Erech Metropolis in the south. About this king has just received news from Ur City. Erech Metropolis is surrounded by dense forest and can no longer be contacted. Gilgamesh said. It seems that the news from Ur City has just reached Uruk. But fortunately, when the enemy only occupied Erech Metropolis and did not have time to approach Ur City, I broke into the temple of the Quetzalcoatl and made a bet with the Quetzalcoatl and won. Wuming smiled and looked at Gilgamesh. Oh, you want to test the content of this king's bet? It is nothing more than the winner obeying the loser's words. Gilgamesh said disdainfully. As expected of Gil. That's right, just like that, I used the heaven lock and defeated the Quetzalcoatl effortlessly. At this point, Gilgamesh was silent. Because the Quetzalcoatl's divinity is a kind deity, I pulled her to our side. She will be in charge of cleaning up the lone magical beasts in the south and will help us when the magical beasts attack. Gilgamesh had just received the news about the lone magical beasts. Gilgamesh had already begun to set up patrols on the main roads of the city. This is still considered good news. Then, did the Quetzalcoatl make any requests? Even if she was a deity, she was still in existence with dignity. Gilgamesh did not believe that she would obey them unconditionally. She only has one request, and that is to let Erech Metropolis hold wrestling competitions at irregular times. Wuming smiled awkwardly. Wrestling competitions? What a strange fellow. This king agrees. Gilgamesh frowned, but still agreed to this strange rule. But, it seems that you have other things to report to this king, Hyunryong. Gilgamesh did not think that such a small matter would make Wuming tired. Wuming was silent for a moment, then spoke. Hey, Gil, I think I am dreaming of Tiamat. Chapter 397. Wuming told Gilgamesh about his experience in the dream. It was definitely not a simple dream. Gilgamesh also took Wuming's dream very seriously. This was not the first time Wuming had heard this song. When he was traveling through the void, and when he was dreaming last night, these two experiences, coupled with Wuming's current identity, and that sense of familiarity, made Wuming suspect that it was Tiamat. Although Tiamat is constantly producing monsters, this king suspects that Tiamat has not appeared in Mesopotamia. She is still in the void, Gilgamesh said thoughtfully. Tiamat had indeed been producing monsters, but this did not mean that Tiamat was in the northern mountains. In the original myth, Tiamat was jointly exiled to the interlayer of the world by her children. In the void, Tiamat had been sleeping like this until modern times. Tiamat was awakened by the mastermind behind the fire, and she began to produce monsters to invade the cities in the north. The inaccessible space you dreamt of, coupled with that strange singing voice, it's very likely that Tiamat hasn't escaped. Gilgamesh pondered. But according to what you said, the Quetzalcoatl, Tiamat, and Ereshkigal have met and formed a contract. This does not make sense. Wuming listened to Gilgamesh's words, and he was quite distressed. If the three of them had met, it meant that Tiamat was indeed in the northern mountains. If Tiamat was in the void, why would Quetzalcoatl say that he had met with the other two pillar goddesses? And if Tiamat had really come out of the void, why did she not directly destroy the Uruk? Why did she continue to produce monsters to invade Mesopotamia? I did not ask about Tiamat's appearance. What a blunder. Wuming shook his head helplessly. However, no one would have thought that Tiamat's whereabouts had become a mystery. Tiamat's body was huge. In theory, Tiamat was comparable to a small island. Even if she was hidden underground, it would be difficult to move. Moreover, they had to consider if they could hide her first. In that case, it is very likely that Tiamat's true body did not come out of the void. The one in the north is Tiamat's clone. Due to lack of power, she could only produce monsters to invade the cities in the north. Wuming thought came to the most likely came to his mind. This king thinks so too. Gilgamesh agreed. Speaking of which, the number of demonic beasts in the north is getting more and more. Although they are all red lions, with the passage of time, these demonic beasts have grown a lot. If there were no servants, I'm afraid the demonic beasts would have attacked us. Gilgamesh took out a new mud tablet and opened a new map. The monsters will rest at night. Although some of them look for food at night, it can be said that it is a very safe time to retreat at night. Then, Gilgamesh pointed to the passages between each town in the north to Wuming. This king's soldiers will let some of the residents in the north retreat through these passages every night. Although there are servants to protect them, the efficiency is too low. Wuming looked at the towns in the north. The roads between the towns were uneven. Some of the surviving towns were not only difficult to travel through, but the residents in the towns were women and children. It was difficult for them to keep up with the rapid retreat at night. Moreover, the map showed that some monsters had appeared even near Nippur city. It could be said that the entire north was no longer safe. So far, with the help of the servants, the north wall established in Nippur city has developed rapidly. But if the reproduction speed and quality of these monsters are improved, they will soon break through. Gilgamesh said calmly. The hidden danger in the south has been solved. There is no more worry in the rear. I can restore my real body to deal with the monsters in the north. The most difficult thing to deal with now is the goddess of the underworld, Ereshkigal, in the east. After all, the enemies on the surface were not terrible, but the enemies in the dark were terrible. As the saying goes, it is easy to dodge a spear in the open but hard to defend against a stab in the dark. For Wuming and the others, Ereshkigal, who could not come to the surface and could only do things in the underworld, was an incomparable headache. That guy has the ability to pull people's souls into the underworld, and Sumer's god like me can't exert my power in the underworld. Wuming was a little distressed. As mentioned before, Ereshkigal could only be born in the underworld. She could not leave the underworld, but she had obtained the power to be invincible in the underworld. As long as the gods were in the underworld, they could not fight against Ereshkigal. This king knows that guy. Although it is a bit unsuitable for her to become the new ruler of the Sumer, but for the time being, she should not do anything. Gilgamesh said, the purpose was to make Wuming feel at ease. Then, there is no time to lose. I will go to Elysium first and inform Quizhar, and then I will go to the north. Wuming said, stood up. These things are not urgent. My soldiers are not so weak that they can't even defeat the current demonic beasts. Gilgamesh stopped Wuming's action. What happened, Gil? As Gilgamesh's teacher, Wuming naturally saw Gilgamesh's intention to stop him, but he still had other things to say. Actually, according to the news from the north, a hostile servant has appeared, green hair, a perfect face, white clothes. Gilgamesh did not continue, and Wuming naturally knew who he was talking about. Enkidu? Wuming frowned. Even the chains on Wuming's clothes trembled slightly. The other party has the same combat ability as Enkidu. Although this king does not believe it, this king deliberately went to check Enkidu's tomb, and the body inside has disappeared. Gilgamesh said with some annoyance. His good friend's body was stolen, and it was very likely that Enkidu's personality had been replaced. Thinking of this, Gilgamesh felt a burst of anger. I will go and check, don't worry, Gil. Facing such a thing, Wuming was also a little angry. Although this world was a parallel world, Enkidu was still the Enkidu Wuming knew, and his nature would not change. Then, Wuming looked at the clay tablets around Gilgamesh. You should rest early, I will take over these clay tablets for you today. As soon as Wuming said this, Gilgamesh was very unhappy. This king does not need your help, this king can take care of these clay tablets. I don't want future records to say that Gilgamesh is the first king in history to die from overwork, that would be too embarrassing. Wuming looked at Gilgamesh with a teasing smile. Do you think this king can do whatever he wants just because he sealed the Gweili sword? You're really bold, Hyunryong. Gilgamesh looked at Wuming wantonly. Then give these documents to me, it's not like I haven't taken care of them for you before. Wuming showed a kind smile. Don't mention that to this king, get out of this king's sight immediately. Yes, if this is what King Gilgamesh wants, then I won't say anything else. Humph. You and Merlin are the same kind of people, pay attention to Enkidu for this king, and immediately leave the Uruk for this king and go to the north to support him. Then, Wuming was kicked out of the Uruk by Gilgamesh. Chapter 398. After all, this was Gilgamesh, the most ancient proud king. Wuming could not outlast him. In the end, Wuming was driven out by Gilgamesh. Oh, isn't this Lord Hyunryong? As soon as they left the tower, Merlin's frivolous voice could be heard. On the street, Wuming met Merlin, who seemed to be heading to the tower. As expected, Merlin, sometimes I really need to give you a good punch. Wuming looked at Merlin rather unhappily. Then, Wuming raised his fist. That's bad, I'm not someone who can take a punch from you. Merlin faced Wuming's fist and smiled calmly. I see that you've been running a lot of errands these 2 days, Merlin. Wuming looked at Merlin gloatingly. You're right, King Gilgamesh arranged a lot of things for me. But even so, Merlin still smiled. Speaking of which, I heard that you dreamed of Tiamat. Wuming looked helplessly at Merlin. Needless to say, this guy used clairvoyance again. Wuming did not tell anyone about his dream of Tiamat. As soon as he returned, he told Gilgamesh. The only way Merlin could know about this was through the current clairvoyance. However, since Merlin mentioned it, then there must be something to say. I used clairvoyance to see Tiamat. I don't know why, but there was a black substance that I couldn't see clearly. However, it's very similar to your aura. About that guy in the north, you have to be careful. Because he knew that Wuming was about to go to the front line, he said with a slightly serious tone. That black substance should be the black mud. Back in Britain, Wuming had used his true form, which was accompanied by the unique aura of the Great Origin. Merlin naturally recognized the things that were of the same origin as Wuming. I got it. How are Tachika and the others now? Wuming nodded and asked about Chaldea. Chaldea and the others are working hard to solve the first singularity, but this is interesting. The black and white saintess somehow reminds me of the dark Artoria. Merlin smiled, but his smile gave Wuming a bad feeling. However, with their speed, I'm afraid they won't be able to catch up with the other singularities. Wuming was a little worried. This is something that can't be helped. In the end, they still have to save their own world. With that, Merlin started walking towards the divine pagoda. Wuming did not say anything else. He had to admit that Merlin was right. Humans needed to save their own world by themselves. Whether it was Wuming, Merlin, or the heroic spirits that had died a long time ago, they were not the main characters. The main characters were humans who were constantly looking for hope in despair. When they arrived outside of Uruk City, Wuming activated his relic, transformed into a giant dragon, and flew into the clouds. Undeniably, flying was a great ability. In addition to Wuming's massive dragon relic, it only took him a day to fly around the entire Mesopotamia. Wuming first went to the southern city of Eridu. There, Wuming told the residents about Gilgamesh's new policy, which was to organize wrestling events at irregular times. Later on, Wuming and Quizhar had a fierce wrestling match. That was right. The entire Eridu could feel the vibrations from their wrestling. As Wuming was more familiar with Wuming, he did not let Quizhar have the upper hand in the wrestling match even though he did not have the upper hand. Hey, I didn't expect Hyunryong to be so talented in wrestling. I'm starting to like you more and more. Do you want to go back to South America with me? Quizhar tempted Wuming with a smile on her face. Of course, Wuming rejected Quizhar. Putting aside how far they were from South America, he did not know if Quizhar would descend in South America. Later on, Wuming instructed Quizhar to do some things. Wuming did not go there to let Quizhar participate in the battle in the north. Instead, he wanted Quizhar to wait for an opportunity and try not to expose the fact that he was no longer working with the other two goddess pillars. After Quizhar said okay, Wuming flew towards the front line in the north. It took almost half a day to fly from the southernmost to the northernmost. In addition, Wuming had started flying from Uruk in the morning. After going to the south and then coming to the north, it was already night time. At this time, the magical beasts had already retreated and started to rest. Although they were magical beasts, they still retained the habits of wild beasts. They rested in the wild and hunted for food during the day. However, this was also good. The tired soldiers who had been fighting the magical beasts for a day could also get sufficient rest. Wuming arrived at the city of Babylon. This was the temporary stronghold that Shiro Amakusa had set up. Wuming did not arrive in Babylon with great fanfare. Instead, when he was still some distance away from Babylon, he transformed into his human form and quietly entered Shiro Amakusa's residence in Babylon. Welcome, Lord Hyunryong. As if he already knew that Wuming would come back, Shiro Amakusa waited for him and then respectfully greeted Wuming. You don't have to be like this, Shiro Amakusa. Although I am Hyunryong from Uruk, you and I are both servants. You can address me as an equal. Wuming waved his hand. No matter what, the two of them were once enemies who fought to the death. Through Shiro Amakusa's speech, Wuming concluded that he still remembered everything about the 14 horsemen. Etiquette cannot be abandoned. You are the teacher of King Gilgamesh, the Uruk's Hyunryong. Even if you are a servant, you are not the same as us. Shiro Amakusa calmly shook his head. Although I still remember the battle between you and me, the winner takes all. I have nothing to say about my defeat. Shiro Amakusa said with a smile. You are indeed worthy of being called a saint. Wuming praised. It had to be said that Shiro Amakusa was indeed worthy of being called the saint of the Far East. He spent 60 years on his wish, but it was destroyed just like that. It was useless for him to hate Wuming. Let's not talk about this for now. Actually, there is one thing I haven't had the time to report to King Gilgamesh. Shiro Amakusa smiled casually, then his expression began to become serious. Ibaraki Duji betrayed us. Wuming frowned. Ibaraki Duji's betrayal was naturally predicted by Wuming, but Wuming also asked Shiro Amakusa to keep an eye on Ibaraki Duji. Shiro Amakusa's strength was not high, but he was still very smart. If he could let Ibaraki Duji betray us, then it was very likely that Ibaraki Duji chose to betray us, but he did not help the other side. Am I right? Chapter 399. Shiro Amakusa had been monitoring Ibaraki Dojo. If Ibaraki Dojo went to help the other side, Shiro Amakusa, who noticed that something was wrong, would order the multiple servants present to kill Ibaraki Dojo together, but he was afraid that they would fail. Ibaraki Dojo was the only remaining ghost who was able to escape from the battle with Abe Saimai, Lai Hiroshi, and Watanabe Tsuyoshi. The reason why Gilgamesh couldn't control her with the command seal was because Gilgamesh's summoning method wasn't the standard Holy Grail war summoning method. Therefore, Gilgamesh didn't have command seals on the back of his hand. Then, Shiro Amakusa nodded with a smile. You're right, because Ibaraki Dojo didn't go to the enemy camp, I didn't choose to stop her. Then, Shiro Amakusa pointed to a mountain range not far from Babylon. That guy escaped to the mountain. According to Fuma Kotaro's report, Ibaraki Dojo joined forces with a group of people to become bandits. Don't think that there were no bandits in Mesopotamia. There were always people who didn't conform to discipline, who had no choice but to kill, let alone in this era of more than 2000 BC. Speaking of which, Shiro Amakusa smiled helplessly. She was clearly a powerful ghost, but now she was playing like a child, running to the mountain to become a bandit leader. Wu Ming was also surprised by Ibaraki Dojo's casual nature after hearing this news. Then let's leave her alone for now. As long as she doesn't cause trouble for us, let her be a bandit leader. As long as Ibaraki Dojo didn't help the monsters, it was fine. Where are the other servants now? Wu Ming asked. Leonidas is building the north wall with the soldiers. After all, Leonidas is good at defense. Okita Soki and Ba Yuzan are covering the residents in other cities. As for Fuma Kotaro. Speaking of which, Wu Ming and Shiro Amakusa looked at the shadows at the same time. A ninja hiding in the shadows looked at the two of them gently, then closed his eyes. As expected of a famous ninja, he's really suitable for the assassin profession. He's been on standby this entire time. After all, the magical beasts in the wild are all resting, so there's no need for him to gather any information. Shiro Amakusa explained. Wu Ming nodded and prepared to head out to help Soaring Sky Headquarters and Bayuchin cover the retreat of the residents. Then, I'll go and help them. If there's nothing important, that's all. After saying that, a white spear fell out of Wu Ming's sleeve. The white spear melted into the ground and turned into ripples. The holy green beast walked out of the ripples. Wu Ming rode on Funbaba, and Funbaba shouted. The ground automatically separated, and green vines appeared, enveloping Funbaba and Wu Ming. This should be the few remaining cities in the north. I'll look for it myself. There's no time to lose. I'll go first. Wu Ming's voice came from the vines. Next, the vines entered the cracked ground. Then, the ground closed up, leaving no trace behind. Is this the power of the forest's divine beast, Funbaba? It's quite powerful. Shiro Amakusa praised. I'll have to trouble you tonight. See if you can find the magical beast's lair. Then, Shiro Amakusa looked at Fuma Kotaro. Understood. After saying that, the figure in the shadows disappeared. The magical beasts are getting stronger, and the casualties are increasing. The soldiers are getting more and more tired. We have to speed up the construction of the north wall. With that, Shiro Amakusa returned to his room and continued with Wu Ming's work. Outside of Babylon, the ground cracked open, and giant vines appeared from within. The vines spread out, and Funbaba and Wu Ming's figures appeared. Then, the vines returned to the ground, and the cracks in the ground closed up again, leaving no trace behind. This was Funbaba's ability. As a divine beast of the forest, it could still manipulate the vines to move under the ground. But it only did this because it was afraid of affecting the residents of Babylon. Let's go there first. I remember there was a city that survived the attack of the magical beasts. After all, Wu Ming had intelligence. Wu Ming basically remembered the location of the remaining cities in the north. Wu Ming's current idea was that if he didn't encounter Okita Soki and Ba Yuzan, then Wu Ming was ready to cover the evacuation of the people in the town. After all, the magical beasts were decreasing at night. With the cover of 2 servants, they could still safely evacuate. Under Wu Ming's command, Funbaba began to move. It had to be said that God really took care of Wu Ming. Wu Ming chose a city. The city in front of him was indeed the city where Okita Soki and Ba Yuzan covered the evacuation tonight. Not far away, on the main road that connected the cities, Wu Ming saw the light of fire, the gleam of blades, and the screams of human beings. This time, it was no longer the red lion Ulidim, but countless blue crawling creatures. The tails of these creatures were high, and the poisonous needles on the tails were shining even in the dark night. Purple venom flowed on the tails as if it was about to drip down. Countless mushifu attacked the migrating humans frantically. Anyone who was stung by the mushifu's poisonous needles couldn't survive, and all of them died of poison. Okita Soki and Ba Yuzan crazily killed these mushifu. Their swords danced, and flames burst. However, against these countless mushifu who only attacked the residents, the effect was like a cup of water on a burning cart of firewood. Funbaba. Under Wu Ming's order, Funbaba gently stomped its foot. Countless vines emerged from the ground and instantly surrounded all the Mushifu and residents. Then, the countless vines seemed to be able to distinguish between demonic beasts and humans. They turned into sharp thorns and penetrated all the Mushifu. In an instant, the whole battlefield quieted down. The survivors simply paid their respects to the dead. Because of the Mushifu's poison, no one dared to touch these corpses. Then, they continued on their way in grief. Funbaba gathered the corpses that had been poisoned, and Wuming used the Lune rune to burn these poisonous corpses. Of course, the corpses of the demonic beasts were also burned. After all, the poisonous corpses were not easy to deal with, and burying them would only pollute the environment. Okita Soki walked at the front, Ba Yuzhen in the middle, and Wuming at the back. The three divided the work. Thank you so much, Hyunryong Sama. Ba Yuzhen, who was walking in the middle, slowly retreated to the back and chatted with Wuming. What happened just now? Didn't you say that the demonic beasts would rest at night? Why are there so many demonic beasts moving at night? Wuming asked. We don't know. We didn't find them when we were scouting. Then, countless demonic beasts suddenly appeared. Then, you came. Ba Yuzhen was a little sad. After all, it was a sudden situation, and many people died. Although there have been demonic beasts attacks before, there were only a few or a small number of them. Today, it was the first time I saw a group of demonic beasts attacking during the day. Ba Yuzhen continued. Let's cover these residents and return to the north wall first. With Funbaba here, there won't be any problems tonight. Woo woo, Funbaba also cried out. With demonic beast Sama and Hyunryong Sama here, I am relieved. Ba Yuzhen also nodded. In this way, Wuming and the other two covered the surviving residents and arrived at Babylon. Chapter 400. What? A large number of demonic beasts attacked you, and they are a new breed of demonic beasts? Shiro Amakusa looked at Okita Soki and Ba Yuzhen and said with some surprise. After all, demonic beasts suddenly changed their habits, making it impossible to guard against them, but this was something that couldn't be helped. That is indeed the case, and the crisis was only resolved after I arrived. Wuming stood aside and testified for the two. It's not that I don't believe their words, but the sudden attack surprised me. Shiro Amakusa shook his head, indicating that he didn't doubt Okita Soki and Ba Yuzhen's words. Wuming naturally understood, and then began to analyze the reason for the attack. There are two possibilities. One is that there is a commander among the demonic beasts, and the other is that these new breeds of demonic beasts fight at night. Wuming proposed two possibilities. If there is a commander, the green-haired girl suspected to be Enkidu on the battlefield is very likely to be the commander. Okita Soki remembered the green-haired girl during the day. However, we can't deny that these new breeds of demonic beasts fight at night. Maybe the large number of demonic beasts just now were hatched by Tiamat. Ba Yuzhen also said. In any case, this matter must be taken seriously. Assassin, please tell King Gilgamesh about this. With that said, Shiro Amakusa looked at Fuma Kotaro, who was standing in the shadows without speaking. Although Fuma Kotaro was sent out by Shiro Amakusa to find Tiamat's nest, because of the emergency just now, he used the communication technology to call Fuma Kotaro back. Understood. After that, Fuma Kotaro disappeared in an instant. It seems that he is going to Uruk overnight. Then, you guys go and rest first. I will let Funbaba scout around Babylon to ensure that there are no enemies attacking, Wuming said. They still have to deal with the attack of demonic beasts the next day. If they don't rest, it will be very unfavorable for them the next day. In that case, I will trouble Hyunryong Sama. Afterward, Okita Soki and Ba Yuzhen both retreated to rest. Early the next morning, the demonic beasts would begin to wreak havoc, so they had to rest well. Ruler, I have something to ask you. Once only Wuming and Shiro Amakusa were left in the room, Wuming spoke. Hyunryong Sama probably wants to ask about the young girl suspected to be Enkidu. Shiro Amakusa smiled. To be honest, I'm not very familiar with that young lady. Saber and Archer have only fought with her for a short while, so I'm afraid I'll have to disappoint Lord Hyunryong. Shiro Amakusa's meaning was that they weren't clear on the girl's situation. I see. Sorry to disturb you. I'll leave first. Funbaba is still waiting for me outside. Take care. Then, Wuming left the place. In the room. Wuming, who had left the room, had a serious expression on his face. After all, the Enkidu in that world was saved by Wuming and brought to the root to be upgraded. However, the Enkidu in this world did not. Wuming was worried that Enkidu had been modified by Tiamat and was being used by her. Clank, the sound of chains could be heard. The heaven lock that was attached to Wuming's clothes moved automatically and stroked Wuming's cheeks. Lil N. Wuming touched the chains and took the opportunity to calm down. Wuming came to Uruk through the Holy Grail. Since the heaven lock had become his rider, knight, noble phantasm, Enkidu's consciousness naturally followed him. Wuming, Sama, please don't be confused. A gentle voice appeared in Wuming's mind. If I'm really modified by Tiamat in this world, then all you have to do is to defeat me. If someone impersonates my body, then all you have to do is to punish that person. Although it's my body, I believe that Enkidu in this world will agree with what you're doing. The golden chains glowed faintly as they communicated with Wuming through telepathy. I'm not that weak. I'm just a little hesitant. Really, Wuming said with a bitter smile. Don't worry. Your body has done something wrong. I'll punish her properly. You don't have to worry about that. The golden chains rubbed Wuming a few times and then returned to Wuming's clothes. When he came out of the courtyard, Funbaba was lying on the ground waiting. Because of the concealment spell that Wuming had set up, none of the residents noticed Funbaba. Let's go, Funbaba. There's work to be done. Woo-woo, because almost all of the northern cities had fallen, a large number of people were forced to move south. Now, the residents of the northern cities were either dead or had come to Babylon and Nippur. There were very few refugees left in other cities, but just in case, Bayuchin continued to search and rescue. The refugees tonight were an example. Now, almost all of the refugees had gathered in Babylon and Nippur, preparing to retreat through these two cities to the north wall that was under construction. Therefore, there were a large number of refugees in Babylon. Coupled with the refugees who had just migrated tonight, Babylon was actually very crowded. If there was a sudden attack by a magical beast in the middle of the night, not to mention the soldiers, these refugees would at least be buried here. Of course, that was in the absence of Wuming and other servants. Wuming took Funbaba to the outside of Babylon. With the activation of Funbaba's ability, countless vines were hidden around the city of Babylon. As long as any magical beast passed by, these vines would have an alarm effect. Not only could it trap the magical beast, but it could also let Funbaba know, so that they could start to defend against the magical beast attack. Tonight, I'll leave it to you, Funbaba. Wuming touched Funbaba's head. Woo-woo, Funbaba replied. Although it was said that he got rid of Funbaba, Wuming was not ready to go to sleep, but he was ready to stay up all night. Wuming looked at the bright moon in the sky and could not help but miss the days with Enkidu and Gilgamesh. At that time, the king was still young, the weapons did not understand the human heart, and the god was still a weak guy. Now, everything had changed. The king became very clear, the weapons also understood the human heart and gained friendship, and the god also became strong and had the power to protect others. In the distance, Gilgamesh put down the clay board in his hand and went to the window to enjoy the full moon. I haven't seen the Uruk moon for a long time, as boring as ever. Gilgamesh said indifferently, but his eyes did not leave the moon. In the north, the girl with long green hair looked at the corpse of the magical beast that had been burned to ashes and looked up at the bright moon. For a moment, the girl did not say anything and left here and returned to the northern mountains. Chapter 401. The next day. A night passed, and there were no demonic beasts. Funbaba hid the vines around Babylon in case of emergency. Wuming did not choose to return to Babylon, but stayed outside. Last night, Shiro Amakusa told Wuming that because the demonic beasts were getting stronger and stronger, every time the soldiers resisted, they would suffer a lot of damage. Therefore, Shiro Amakusa began to use defensive tactics. Because Babylon was not suitable for defense, everyone set up traps and various defensive measures in the north of Babylon. The purpose was to resist the attack of the demonic beasts. Now, Babylon's army had been assembled, and the reason why Wuming did not choose to return to Uruk was because Wuming wanted to personally meet these demonic beasts. After waiting for a few minutes, it was time for the demonic beasts to attack. Roar. Hiss. The roar of the demonic beasts could be heard. The red lion and the blue poison-tailed lizard came from afar. Like a group of rushing red and blue sea, the two types of demonic beasts mixed together and attacked Babylon. There are so many demonic beasts, even with the help of servants, they can't stop them. Wuming frowned. After all, such a group of demonic beasts was not something that Shiro Amakusa and the other servants could resist. It seems like what Shiro Amakusa said is true. These days, the demonic beasts have begun to become stronger. After saying that, Wuming got down from Funbaba and began to prepare magic. Although I came as a rider, I can still use Loon magic and Yggdrasil, World Tree, magic. After saying that, Wuming raised both of his hands, one hand drew something, and the other hand lit up a magic circle. Flame, ice, holy light, black fog, vines, water blade, rock, countless low-level magic were cast by Wuming, facing the demonic beasts rushing toward this side. It had to be said that no matter how powerful a magical beast was, it would be akin to a moth darting into a flame if it were to use its physical body to charge at Linley. Roar. Hiss. The magic beast's blood-curdling screams kept echoing as one magic beast after another collapsed, turning into pure mana and disappearing. This might be the price of magic beasts becoming stronger. Ever since the magic beasts started to become more powerful, the magic beasts that died would turn into mana and disappear instead of leaving behind a physical body. However, this was also good. If the corpses were left behind, it would be troublesome to clean up the battlefield. As expected, they're just a bunch of beasts that only know how to kill. They don't have the ability to scheme at all. Wuming said with some disdain. If it wasn't for the fact that there were too many magical beasts, the intelligence of the people in each city would have been enough to defend against them. But this is also good. There's no need to care too much about things like props, Funbaba, Wuming said to Funbaba. Woo-woo, Funbaba responded, taking a step forward and slightly straightening its body. Countless vines broke out of the ground, like a huge python, soaring into the sky. Some entangled the magic beasts, like a blender, crushing their prey. Some were like sharp blades, piercing through the magic beasts. Some simply tore their prey apart. Fortunately, these magic beasts would immediately turn into pure mana and disappear after death, so there was no need to care about the blood or the piling up of corpses. Although the magic beasts suffered heavy losses, the remaining magic beasts didn't shrink back. As if they didn't know that there was nothing, the other magic beasts still rushed forward one after another. Sure enough, props born for battle. Looking at these magic beasts rushing forward one after another, Wuming shook his head disinterestedly. In that case, all returned to the underworld. Wuming used a more powerful move, like a cannon, constantly bombarding the attacking magic beasts. Funbaba also worked harder, attacking the magic beasts in the gaps of the explosions caused by Wuming's skills. It had to be said that the cooperation between the two was perfect. The violent explosions even changed the terrain, creating craters one after another. Countless vines emerged from the gaps between the explosions, creating even more craters and wiping out the lone magic beasts one after another. Soon, countless pits joined together, turning the northern plains of Babylon into a basin. Almost a few minutes later, Wuming and Funbaba stopped attacking. Smoke filled the northern part of Babylon, and countless magic beasts turned into pure mana particles, leaving only the changed terrain, proving that the magic beasts once existed. However, Wu-ming didn't show an expression that he had finished, but looked at the smoke in front of him solemnly. The number of magic beasts couldn't be this small. There was no doubt that the magic beasts that only knew how to attack temporarily retreated. If that was the case, then there must be something similar to a commander. Could it be? Just as Wu-ming was worried, a figure walked out of the smoke. Long green hair, a rare beauty, and white clothes that didn't have a single speck of dust on them. Without a doubt, this was Enkidu, who was originally dead. Putting that aside, Wu-ming sensed a special energy from Enkidu's body. Then, Wu-ming spoke. As expected, the rest of the magic beasts retreated under your command. Wu-ming looked at Enkidu with an indescribable expression. Master Hyunryong, long time no see. Enkidu said to Wu-ming as if they hadn't seen each other for a long time. Don't give me that. Am I worth it? You're not Enkidu. Wu-ming's expression didn't change at all as he said calmly. As expected, pretending in front of me will definitely get exposed. Enkidu said self-deprecatingly, then showed a proud expression. To be honest, this body misses you very much. I can't help but respect and love you, Master Hyunryong. Enkidu smiled calmly and didn't feel annoyed that he was exposed. Although you're using Enkidu's body, your performance is too different from Enkidu's. I can tell that you're a fake with one look. Wu-ming said calmly. It can't be helped, I'm just a fake. Enkidu didn't get angry at Wu-ming's words and replied with a smile. Let me tell you, I'm very angry that I'm using Enkidu's body. Wu-ming closed his eyes, then suddenly opened them and looked at Enkidu. This gaze made Enkidu tremble with fear, as if he was looking directly at death. A trace of cold sweat trickled down his back. Let's put this aside for now. I'm going to ask you directly, is your heart the Holy Grail? Chapter 402. After hearing Wu-ming's words, Enkidu quickly retreated and covered her chest with her hands. Although she looked like a young girl who was about to be violated and was trying to defend herself, as expected of Lord Hyunryong, to be able to sense my heart, Enkidu looked at Wu-ming with extreme vigilance and sneered. As expected, Enkidu's heart is the holy grail of this singularity. However, Wu-ming shook his head and covered his chest with his hand. You can feel it too, right? My heart is also a holy grail. Wu-ming was based on the holy grail that formed the singularity of Fuyuki City. With it as the heart, he formed the rider, cavalry, class spirit base. Although Enkidu hit it well, the holy grail of the Winterwood City singularity and other singularities were somewhat related. Wu-ming already felt a sense of familiarity when Enkidu arrived, and only now did he confirm that it was the holy grail. Now that you mention it, I feel it too. Enkidu also looked at Wu-ming's chest and could vaguely see a holy grail that was beating like a heart. Since you already know, I can only leave, Enkidu said as she prepared to leave. But the moment she turned around, she stopped and looked at Wu-ming. As mother's child, and with the feelings of this body, I don't want you to die. Let me give you a piece of advice, Lord Hyunryong, give up on the humans and join our side. After saying that, Enkidu began to retreat. At the same time, countless monsters appeared behind Enkidu to provide cover. Wu-ming did not chase Enkidu and let her leave. Fen Baba walked in front of Wu-ming and protected Wu-ming behind him. Although there was no need to protect him with his master's ability, he couldn't allow these small fries to harass his master. Fen Baba released its vines to kill the magic beasts that were rushing over. The magic beasts were not afraid of death and resolutely continued to charge. Wu-ming stood behind Fen Baba and watched Enkidu disappear into the crowd of magical beasts. No one knew what he was thinking. At this moment, a gentle voice sounded. Aren't you going to stop it? Wu-ming's golden chains made a sound. There's no need for that. Even if we eliminate this singularity now, that guy will definitely find a way to send us another holy grail. Wu-ming shook his head. Besides, that's your body, so I can't really do it. Wu-ming smiled embarrassedly. Master Wu-ming, you're really gentle. The chains shook gently and then became silent. Well, it's time to clean up these items, Wu-Ming said and joined the slaughter of the magic beasts. Later, with the cooperation of Wu-Ming and Fanbaba, the magic beasts that gathered in the north of Babylon were all killed. After that, Wu-Ming rode Fanbaba toward the north, but the magic beasts seemed to be scared and almost disappeared. In the afternoon, Wu-Ming rode Fanbaba back to Babylon. After being welcomed by the excited people and soldiers, Wu-Ming entered the meeting hall of the servants. Leaving Fanbaba in the huge open space outside the meeting hall, Wu-Ming walked into the meeting hall. Clap clap clap. As soon as Wu-Ming entered the meeting hall, he heard the sound of applause. As expected of the patron saint of Uruk, the teacher of the ancient king, the great and mysterious figure known as Hyunryong. Then, Shiro Amakusa's flattering voice came. With the help of Hyunryong-sama, we will be able to destroy the magic beasts. Ba Yuzan said with a voice like that of Yamato. Well, Hyunryong-sama is as reliable as Takaka-san and Kondo-san, no, more reliable than them. Okita Soki said with a smile. You must be referring to the bravest man in the world. It's hard to believe that if there was someone like you in the battle at Hot Spring Gate, the outcome would have been different than mine, Leonidas, whose face was hidden by the helmet, said. However, Wu-Ming just smiled at these praises, then shook his head. You must be joking, those magic beasts are just some miscellaneous soldiers. They are all the inferior mass-produced children of Tiamat's magical beasts. They can't even be considered as living creatures, they can only be regarded as tools. If the real Tiamat's magical beasts appear, I'm afraid they won't be weaker than the servants. Wu-Ming didn't get carried away by the praises of the servants because he knew that these magic beasts were just simple miscellaneous soldiers. They relied on their numbers to gain an advantage. Even Shiro Amakusa and the others had no problem killing these magic beasts if they had an unlimited supply of magic power. Of course, in addition to the magic power, there was another point. Shiro Amakusa and the others were there to protect the people, not to attack the enemy, so there was no need to be like Wu-Ming. More importantly, the number and variety of magic beasts is likely to increase again. With Tiamat's continuous optimization of magic beasts, the magic beasts may become stronger and stronger. In the later stage, whether it's the number or quality of magic beasts, I'm afraid that a single servant can't kill them alone. Wu-Ming said slightly solemnly. The others also realized this problem, and their faces were full of seriousness. About this problem, King Gilgamesh has already sent news. At this time, Shiro Amakusa spoke. Last night, Mr. Fuma went to Uruk overnight and conveyed the news of the current frontline to King Gilgamesh. Then, King Gilgamesh made a plan overnight and asked Mr. Fuma to bring it back. On the other side of the meeting hall, Fuma Kotaro appeared from the shadows as if to confirm Shiro Amakusa's words. Shiro Amakusa took out the information that Fuma Kotaro handed in last night. King Gilgamesh's new order is for servants to put down their work and help speed up the construction of the northern wall. Move the people who stayed in Babylon and Nippur to the back of the northern wall as soon as possible and complete the magic beast front. Shiro Amakusa read the content on the clay board. But, who will resist the magic beasts here? There are also the people who survived in the cities. There are also a few cities that we have confirmed that there are still people left. Okita Soki said with some confusion. In this regard, before Shiro Amakusa could speak, Wu-Ming laughed first. I will defend the front line alone, including the rescue of the remaining people. The other servants and soldiers will go to the northern wall. Is that what King Gilgamesh said? Wu-Ming said with great certainty as if he guessed Gilgamesh's meaning. Shiro Amakusa laughed. As expected of Hyunryong-sama, the king's teacher. That's right, for the time being, Hyunryong-sama will take over the defense of the front line, and the rescue work will be the same. King Gilgamesh said in the letter, this king's teacher is there, you can let him take over. This is how teachers are used at this time. Don't worry, he is much more useful than you. That's what King Gilgamesh meant. Shiro Amakusa finished reading. What a cruel king. He actually let his own teacher take over. If he was in the Shinsengumi, he would definitely be resisted. Okita Soki said with some helplessness. Well, but Hyunryong-sama is indeed more useful than us. It is a great honor to be able to get the help of Hyunryong. Leonidas smiled casually at Gilgamesh's ridicule in the letter. Then, let's do it this way. Some of you will cover the residents of Babylon and Nippur to leave here. Some of you will go back to the northern wall to help build the wall. I will defend the front line. Ruler, tell me the location of the remaining people in the cities. I will go and save them. Well, then let's do it this way. Chapter 403. Soon, Shiro Amakusa told Wuming the location of the city with the remaining citizens. The servants were divided into two troops, one went to the north wall to build the wall, and the other escorted the citizens to evacuate. The army was also divided into two groups. One group followed the servants to the north wall and went to build the north wall. The other group stayed behind to escort the citizens. Later, Shiro Amakusa, Leonidas, and Fuma Kotaro led the army to the north wall to help build the defense. Okita Soki and Ba Yuzan were arranged to cover the evacuation of Babylon and Nippur, and the army was also divided into two troops. It felt like he was taking care of the girls, cough cough. After that, Wuming also left Babylon. It seemed like the demonic beasts were afraid of Wuming and Funbaba. Wuming left Funbaba behind, and he went to the city with the remaining citizens that Shiro Amakusa said to rescue. When night came, Wuming returned to Funbaba alone. Funbaba didn't lie down to rest this time, but he was walking around like a patrol. How is it, Funbaba? Is there anything unusual? Woo-woo, hearing Wuming's question, Funbaba shook his head and said twice, indicating that there was nothing unusual. Is that so? Wuming already understood why there was nothing unusual. In the towns that Wuming went to, there was no one left. At that time, Wuming checked the city, and the traces of the demonic beast's invasion were quite obvious. Wuming carefully searched the town, but Wuming didn't find any living people, not even corpses. Except for some blood on the ground, only the panicked town was left empty. It seemed that the rest of the people were dragged to the nest by the demonic beasts. With his own speed, Wuming quickly checked all the towns in the north. Wuming discovered something. No matter who it was, there were very few bloodstains. Currently, there were no magical beasts with mouths big enough to swallow a person whole. Since that was the case, there was only one possibility. Although it's inconceivable, those people should have all been transported back to their nest by the magical beasts. Wuming said with a grave expression. And why did the magical beasts transport those people back to their lair? Serve as food reserves? To become nourishment for Tiamat? Serving as nutrients for the production of other magic beasts? Although it was cruel to say this, but they had already entered the lair of the magical beasts, and the magical beasts could do whatever they wanted. Woo-woo, Funbaba lowered its head and rubbed against Wuming to comfort him. Although I'm not in a good mood, I'm more worried about one thing. Wuming patted Funbaba, indicating that he wasn't worried, and then continued. Say, do you think those people will be transformed into demonic beasts after they've been captured? This sentence made Funbaba a little stunned. I don't think that Tiamat, who can produce so many demonic beasts, needs nourishment, and I don't think these demonic beasts will bring people back just to store food for their own kind. Then, Wuming smiled casually. Of course, I'm just guessing, and it's very possible that my guess is wrong. Although he said this, Wuming's smile immediately became calm. And that person using Enkidu's body, she must be related to Tiamat. To be able to steal Enkidu's body without anyone noticing, it must be that person or his 72 subordinates who did it. But since they were able to entrust the Holy Grail to them, act together with Tiamat's demonic beasts, and tell me that they are both children of the same mother, there is no doubt that she must be related to Tiamat, and their relationship is not shallow, Wuming said with certainty, and then began to think about who the real person in Enkidu's body was. Woo-woo, looking at the frowning Wuming, Funbaba stepped forward and pushed the unprepared Wuming to the ground, and then pressed its huge head on Wuming's body. Wait. Wait, Funbaba, what are you doing? Being pushed down, Wuming was startled, and his thoughts jumped out of his thoughts. Woo-woo, Funbaba ignored Wuming's question, and continued to act like a spoiled child, constantly rubbing against Wuming. But little did he know that with the huge Funbaba rubbing against him like this, Wuming couldn't take it. I know, I won't think about it anymore, get off of me first. Woo-woo. After a short period of disturbance, Wuming got rid of Funbaba's spoiled child. Then, it was already evening, and the sun had set. Really, don't jump on me in the future, your head is bigger than my body, how can you just jump on me like that? Wuming sorted out the disturbance caused by Funbaba, and said to Funbaba somewhat helplessly. Woo-woo, Funbaba sat there obediently, like a child who admitted its mistake. Well, I'm not blaming you, be careful next time. Seeing the listless Funbaba, Wuming was amused, and then quickly comforted Funbaba. Woo-woo, after being touched by its master, Funbaba showed a happy expression. For a moment, Wuming sat on Funbaba, and Funbaba carried Wuming slowly towards the north. Wuming looked at the endless plains in the north, as well as the mountainous fir forest in the northwest. There was no doubt that the magical beasts had come from there. Speaking of which, the fir forest seems to be your territory, Funbaba. Wuming suddenly remembered that Funbaba used to live in the fir forest. Woo-woo, Funbaba's huge head nodded, its current state was like having a home that it couldn't go back to. Well, but you actually don't care, right? Wuming just smiled at this. Funbaba didn't care about its residents, and the fir forest was just a good forest, so Funbaba settled there. Woo-woo, Funbaba was very happy. After Funbaba had Wuming as its master, it was very happy to follow its master. Looking at the lights of Babylon behind him, Wuming asked Funbaba. Have the vines been set up? Woo-woo. Because Wuming needed to defend against the attack of the magical beasts alone, Funbaba began to set up vines underground when Wuming went to look for survivors during the day. Don't think that Funbaba was really just strolling. Very good, then now we just have to wait for the magical beasts to attack. I have a hunch that the magical beasts will attack tonight. Wuming said seriously. Although it wanted to complain about how its master knew, Funbaba didn't ask for a rebuff, anyway, it just followed its master. After that, until almost dawn, there was no movement on the plains, not even a bird or a rabbit could be seen. It's coming. Chapter 404. Coming. After Wuming said that, Funbaba raised its head and looked ahead. The night in Mesopotamia was dark. If there was no light, it would be hard to see. Countless red dots appeared in the forest of fir trees in the distant mountainous region. Those were the shining eyes of demonic beasts at night. Of course, the degree of danger was the same. On the plain in front of Wuming, there were many red dots. Looking at the number, there were more demonic beasts than during the day. Roar. Accompanied by the charge and roar of the demonic beasts, the earth began to tremble. If these demonic beasts really rushed over, perhaps all the citizens of Babylon and Nippur would suffer. Did all these demonic beasts come out? Does Tiamat want to start a full-scale war now? Wuming said seriously, his tone was puzzled. Starting a war first was not good for either side. The human side that had not yet established the North Wall would suffer heavy losses, but Tiamat, who was in the northern mountains, would also lose the protection of the demonic beasts. The servants could form a surprise attack force and go straight to the root of the problem. With so many demonic beasts coming, coupled with the tremors on the ground, Babylon, which was currently closest to the north, must have noticed. After all, since there was an example of a demonic beast attack at night, whether it was Babylon or Nippur, they had sent more people to guard the night for fear of a sudden attack by demonic beasts. Don't worry about that, Funbaba, raise the vine wall. Wuming had no time to study those things, the most important thing now was to stop the attack of the demonic beasts. Funbaba understood and walked forward for a distance, then its huge feet gently stomped on the ground, like an earthquake. Rumble, a green wall rose behind Funbaba and Wuming. Taking a closer look, it was a wall made of vines. The vine wall was oriented from east to west. That's right, it was the same as the north wall. However, compared to the north wall, the vine wall made by Funbaba was very weak. Because it was made in a hurry, the most it could do was to resist the attack of the magical beasts tonight. If the magical beasts continued to attack without any external interference, a hole would appear in the vine barrier when it was almost dawn. When the sky was completely bright, the vine barrier would completely collapse. Of course, if Enkidu had come, the outcome would have been different. The vine barrier might not even last for a moment. This was the reason why Wuming and Funbaba were outside the vine barrier. They wanted to stop Enkidu from destroying the vine barrier and reduce the number of monsters as much as possible. Wuming got down from the Funbaba and walked to the front of the Funbaba. One man and one beast stood there. Although they were facing thousands of magical beasts, they did not panic at all. Then, let's begin. Let's party all night. As he spoke, Wuming's hands began to move non-stop. Lines of Lune runes were drawn by Wuming's hands. Each Lune rune seemed to be able to find a matching Lune rune. They began to combine and attack the magical beasts in the distance. Funbaba was not idle either. It controlled countless vines to rush out from the ground and attack the magical beasts that were rushing towards them. Countless Lune runes appeared in Wuming's hands. Together with the vines that kept coming out from the ground, they strangled the magical beasts that were rushing towards them. Although the magical beasts were almost in front of Wuming, if this was the extent of it, then the magical beasts that came out in full force tonight would be annihilated. And Wuming didn't think that there would only be magical beasts attacking. And now, Wuming once again proved how accurate his intuition was. Without a doubt, it was Enkidu. As for Wuming, who currently possessed extremely high divinity, once he was entangled by Enkidu, he would not be able to move for a short period of time. The enemy also saw this point and used Enkidu. At the same time, a golden chain extended from Wuming's body and wrapped around the silver chain. This was an action initiated by Wuming's Enkidu consciousness. Wuming did not participate. Walala. The golden chain and silver chain entangled with each other and let out ear-piercing sounds. As expected, Sir Hyunryong, the chain on your body is Enkidu. At this moment, Enkidu's voice sounded from the magical beasts. Enkidu walked out from the magical beasts. The area around Enkidu was like a forbidden zone where no magical beasts dared to approach. As expected, you're the only one who can use Enkidu. Wuming was relieved. There were only two Enkidu in this world. One was Gilgamesh's, but Gilgamesh's Enkidu had always been sealed in the treasury. The other was naturally Enkidu's body. As a god-made armament, Enkidu could transform into Enkidu. Therefore, only the person using Enkidu's body had Enkidu's Enkidu. Wuming's Enkidu naturally came from Enkidu in the parallel world. Like an ill-fated relationship, Enkidu in this world and Enkidu in the parallel world converged. The silver chain extended from Enkidu's sleeves, and the end was connected to the golden chain. Don't even think about harming Sir Wuming. At this moment, Enkidu heard a voice through the golden chain. Enkidu was startled. That voice was not unfamiliar to Enkidu. It was a voice that Enkidu was extremely familiar with. It was the same voice as this body's. So that's how it is. Is that the real Enkidu? Enkidu received the real Enkidu's voice through the connection between the two chains. At the same time, the golden chain transmitted some other information to Enkidu. In that instant, Enkidu saw a lot of things, heard a lot of things, and even felt a lot of things. Damn it. Enkidu was shocked and immediately put away the chain. The golden chain did nothing to stop it. Almost at the same time, the silver chain returned to Enkidu, and the golden chain returned to Wuming. Enkidu closed one of his eyes and painfully covered his other eye with one hand. Sir Wuming, as expected, you're more skilled. Be careful, Mother will personally take action. Enkidu said painfully and then disappeared among the monsters. Without a doubt, Enkidu had retreated. Just as Enkidu finished speaking, the ground began to shake even more violently than before. Chapter 405. Wu-Ming and Fanbaba couldn't care less about killing the demonic beasts that were already charging towards them, because the ground in front of them had already undergone an unprecedented change. On the boundless plain, the earth began to crack from the center, and then the entire earth was completely torn apart. Then, a huge figure appeared from the earth. The figure was more than 100 stories tall, with an incomparably huge snake tail, sharp and terrifying claws, a body and face covered in scales, and a head full of ferocious snake hair. Its huge eyes flashed with a dangerous scarlet light as it stared at Wu-Ming and Fanbaba, who were like ants in front of it. Boom! Fanbaba replaced Wu-Ming to clean up the surrounding demonic beasts a little, and Wu-Ming, who was free, looked at this prehistoric giant beast. This familiar feeling, this divinity, it's actually Tiamat. Wu-Ming looked at the snake hair goddess in front of him with some surprise. However, Wu-Ming could clearly recognize that the snake hair goddess in front of him was a Greek demonic beast, Medusa, who devoured 2 of her sisters, and transformed into an Avenger demonic beast, Gorgon. A Gorgon that was given Tiamat's personality, but to be honest, it's really a good match. Wu-Ming didn't panic in the face of danger, and instead, he smiled. But then again, Enkidu actually said, not long after Enkidu retreated, "It was a little too honest, wasn't it, Fanbaba? You should retreat," Wu-Ming said to Fanbaba, who was continuously killing the demonic beasts around him and working hard. Woo-woo. Fanbaba naturally shook its head, and then rubbed its head against Wu-Ming. "Alright, I'll take care of it. These vines still need your protection. You should know that there are countless lives behind these vines. Be a good girl," Wu-Ming gently stroked Fanny Baba's head, persuading her with both logic and emotion. Woo-woo. Fanbaba was silent for a few seconds, and then nodded. "Good child, so obedient," Wu-Ming smiled gently at Fanbaba. Then, Fanbaba released one last attack to repel the surrounding demonic beasts. Then, Fanbaba left this place through the vines and went to the interior of the vine barrier. "Okay, now I'm the only one left." Wu-Ming looked at the giant demonic beast Gorgon. However, Gorgon didn't answer Wu-Ming's question, either because it didn't know how to speak or because it didn't want to. Instead, it directly launched an attack. The countless snake heads on Gorgon's hair opened their mouths and gathered magic. Then, countless snake heads shot out heat rays, burying the place where Wu-Ming was, including the demonic beasts. Rumble. A powerful explosion occurred. The dust and flames of the explosion covered Wu-Ming's figure, and Gorgon stopped moving. "Really? What a warm greeting, fake Tiamat." Wu-Ming's voice came from the smoke. "Who?" A huge white dragon claw came out of the smoke, like a dragon out of the clouds, and stretched towards Gorgon at an extremely fast speed. Gorgon was shocked and immediately controlled the snake hair to intercept it. Hiss hiss hiss. As if its target was the snake hair from the beginning, the dragon claw grabbed the snake hair and tore it off. Gorgon let out a scream that didn't belong to a human. "It's impolite not to reciprocate. Are you satisfied with this greeting gift of mine?" A calm voice came. A huge dragon emerged from the smoke caused by the explosion as if it had come out of a small space-time tunnel. The pure white dragon god had shining dragon scales, holy dragon horns, and white dragon wings that were twice the size of its body. Its holy dragon claws were still holding on to the struggling broken snake hair. Then, a white flame burned the snake hair, completely incinerating it. Gorgon spoke. "Damn Hyunryong." Gorgon's hoarse voice came out of his throat like a broken bellows. "As long as I'm here, don't even think about going back alive today, fake Tiamat." Just like that, the huge snake hair monster and the sacred dragon of protection started a confrontation in the plains in front of Babylon, a city in the north of Mesopotamia. The battle between mother and son in Mesopotamia had begun for the second time. Uruk City, Divine Tower. Because Mesopotamia was mainly plains, Gorgon, who was more than a few hundred stories tall, and Gorgon, who was only as tall as Wu-Ming, appeared near Babylon. They were seen by the entire Uruk City, which wasn't far from Babylon. Tiamat. Gorgon. Gilgamesh looked at Tiamat and fell into deep thought. King Gilgamesh, King. Then, Siduri's voice came from the stairs of the Divine Tower. Siduri rushed to the highest floor of the Divine Tower where Gilgamesh was in a slight panic. King, Lord Hyunryong, humph. Idiot, of course, this king saw it, Gilgamesh said disdainfully. Since Gilgamesh saw it, the Uruk citizens naturally saw it as well. King, the citizens are very uneasy. Some of them have already lost their minds. Siduri calmed down and said. The citizens were uneasy because of the confrontation between Tiamat, who was the mother goddess, and Hyunryong, who was the direct descendant of Tiamat. The existence of the mother and son confronted each other. This rebellious battle of gods caused everyone's worldview to collapse slightly. Moreover, Tiamat's deterrence toward the ordinary people made the citizens even more fearful. That's why this king said that humans are foolish beyond compare. The battle of the gods is not something that humans can stop. They can only witness it and pray for it. Hyunryong is protecting this king's citizens. The foolish citizens should pray for Hyunryong and pray for Hyunryong's victory. Gilgamesh was even more disdainful now. After speaking to Siduri, Gilgamesh turned around and looked at Gorgon and Hyunryong. He did not say anything else. Siduri did not ask any more questions. She crossed her arms and began praying to Wuming. Lord Hyunryong, you must win. Shiro Amakusa, Fuma Kotaro, and Leonidas were trying their best to rush to Babylon. It would not be long before Babylon, which was within the range of the two great gods' attacks, would be affected. They had to evacuate the population as soon as possible. Is that Tiamat? What a terrifying avenger. Shiro Amakusa did not stop walking as he spoke seriously. Lord Hyunryong's body is also quite shocking. He's almost on par with Tiamat's body. It's truly astonishing. Leonidas praised from the side. Only Fuma Kotaro remained silent. However, his increased speed showed his respect for the two great gods. Let's speed up. Otherwise, the remaining citizens of Babylon will be finished. With that, the three of them increased their speed again. At this moment, Wuming and Tiamat began the second round of confrontation after the first battle. Chapter 406. In order to protect the vine barrier behind him and the city of Babylon, Wuming blocked all of Gorgon's attacks during the transformation process. Then, Wuming completely revealed his true body. Wuming's body shouldn't be comparable to Gorgon's, but Wuming's magic power could not withstand Wuming's growth. The so-called dragon form was a noble artifact, but it was also a rider rank. Wuming's body could naturally catalyze it. Wuming catalyzed his dragon body to a size that, although not as large as Gorgon's, was enough to contend with him. Although it could accelerate the growth of his body, it was almost at its limit. If he continued to catalyze his body, his rider rank spirit base would shatter. Therefore, Wuming chose to stop growing his body. Wuming knew that with his and Gorgon's figures, if they were to fight here, Babylon behind Wuming would definitely be affected. The north wall not far from Babylon was likely to collapse. I have to leave this place and move the battlefield to an uninhabited area in the north. Thinking of this, he opened his mouth and condensed his dragon breath. Hiss. Gorgon's torn snake head had regenerated. Countless snake heads opened their mouths like Wuming, condensing heat rays in their mouths. Accompanied by the dragon's roar, Wuming's dragon breath was condensed and sprayed towards Gorgon. Hiss. Countless snake heads were not to be outdone. They hissed and shot out rays from their mouths to meet Wuming's dragon breath. Hiss. The pure white dragon breath and the purple-black heat ray fought against each other, making a sizzling sound. There was neither an explosion nor any other reaction. It was as if the two forces were balanced. However, a mere monster was no match for a holy dragon. The holy dragon breath gradually suppressed the heat ray and pressed towards Gorgon. Damn it! Gorgon once again made a hoarse sound like an old bellows. Then, the dragon breath hit Gorgon and knocked him to the ground. Boom! His snake hair billowed as Gorgon's huge body lay on the ground, causing another earthquake. Now! Wuming fiercely flapped his wings and flew into the sky with a large amount of gravel on the ground. After circling in the sky for a while, Wuming swooped down and grabbed Gorgon with his claws. It had to be said that a huge body brought great strength and endurance, but in terms of agility, it was a big disadvantage. At this moment, Gorgon was like this. Gorgon was knocked to the ground by Wuming's powerful dragon breath, but after all, Gorgon's endurance was super high. Because of the effect of the skill transformation magic, Gorgon's endurance had reached A++ level. Pure dragon breath could not harm Gorgon, so Wuming changed the dragon breath into an impact attack aimed at Gorgon's body and successfully knocked him to the ground. Although he had the same agility as Wuming, if Wuming's speed increased, Gorgon would not be able to react in time. The mysterious Loon rune wrapped around Wuming's huge dragon body. At this moment, Wuming's agility had surpassed rank A. Wuming successfully grabbed Gorgon before Gorgon could get up. However, Wuming did not want to harm him. Bang! Wuming's two huge dragon claws grabbed Gorgon's two hands. The Loon rune appeared again, and the strength of rank B instantly surpassed Gorgon. Wuming flew up with Gorgon. That's right, Wuming wanted to change the battlefield. However, in the face of a huge existence like Gorgon, it was not convenient to divert its attention. Therefore, Wuming chose to change the battlefield. He directly used his advantage as a flying dragon to grab Gorgon and fly. It had to be said that this was a bold and stupid method. How stupid! Gilgamesh looked at Wuming flying north and Wuming carrying Gorgon as he frowned and scolded. Not to mention whether Gorgon would attack Wuming in the air. Even if he carried Gorgon that weighed more than 10,000 pounds, Wuming's spirit base would not be able to handle it. No matter which one it was, the final battle after reaching the destination would be disadvantageous to Wuming. Lord Hyunryong. Siduri closed her eyes, no longer looking at the disappearing dragon figure, and silently prayed. It had to be said that Gilgamesh was right. In the sky, Wuming, who was flying north, was already being attacked by Gorgon. Although Gorgon's hands were grabbed by Wuming's dragon claws, Gorgon did not rely on its hands to attack. Gorgon glared angrily as countless snake hair tore at Wuming's body. Traces of blood flowed from Wuming's body. The blood dripped onto the ground, leaving a special mark. After all, this was Hyunryong's body, not the body of the origin dragon. Therefore, Gorgon with Tiamat's body could cause damage to Wuming. At this moment, if one looked carefully, one could see that there was a trace of electricity passing through Wuming's body, and a trace of gray appeared on the dragon scales. That was the demon eye, a gemstone-grade demon eye of petrification that could petrify all enemies. After all, it was Medusa's cursed growth state, so it was normal for it to have the legendary Medusa's demon eye of petrification. Although Gorgon had used the magic eye on Wuming from the beginning, Wuming, who had A+ holy aura and A+ magic power ability, was extremely resistant to the magic eye of petrification, so the magic eye of petrification did not have much effect. Got to say, the demon eye of petrification was really a killer move. For example, Anna dealt with Demudo, and the demon eye of petrification had a fatal effect. However, it was somewhat useless to use it on Wuming. In this position, it's about time. Wuming ignored the damage on his body. After seeing that they were far enough away, Wuming let go of Gorgon's dragon claws. At the same time, Wuming widened his enormous dragon mouth, instantly condensed dragon breath, and sprayed it at the descending Gorgon. Boom! The dragon's breath hit Gorgon, who had fallen to the ground like a huge meteorite. There was a huge roar on the ground, causing a large amount of smoke and dust. The smoke was in the shape of a mushroom cloud, spreading and covering Gorgon's body. Wuming flew in the sky, relying on his strong durability and Loon runes to recover himself. He looked at the mushroom cloud below sternly. And just as Wuming looked down solemnly, laser-like rays shot out crazily from the mushroom cloud at an extremely high frequency. Wuming waved his body to dodge. Because of the sudden arrival, one of the rays brushed past Wuming's wings. Sizzle! Wuming's wings emitted a sound as if they were being burned, producing carbonization and black smoke. It's different from the previous attack. Wuming frowned. Then, the laser beam stopped, accompanied by a hurricane. Gorgon pushed away the smoke and stared at Wuming with scarlet eyes. As expected, you are an unstable factor that must be eliminated. You're tuning into the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.